Let's give a quick thanks to our sponsor, Audible. You can play their audiobooks anywhere an iPhone, Kindle Fire, Windows Phone, or MP3 player can be used. If you've got a device, Audible has a book for it. Do yourself a favor and download a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial by visiting audiblepodcast.com/chat. That's audiblepodcast.com/CHAT. Welcome back once again to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. I am again, as always, Chat Show. So nice of you to join us. How are you? Are you having yourself a lovely weekend? Those of you watching us live on YouTube, those of you who aren't, please join us sometime. We stream live on Sundays, usually at 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. But check the local listings there on the YouTube. It's always announced on the Twitter. For those of you that give a shit. It's a fun experience. Is there's a chat room still that you're talking to people on the YouTube? We figured out.
A little bit.
A little bit? Which reminds me.
It's the YouTube like comment section, so they're there, but it's hard to keep a conversation going.
That reminds me, I didn't set up the.
No, you did not.
The forwarding. I might have to do that while our guest is talking. First of all, happy Mother's Day. Let's get that out of the way. Let's discuss
Happy Mother's Day.
How great everyone's mother is. No one's
For
mother's
fun.
crazy. What are you talking about? We have a mother in town staying at La Casa.
Julia K. Fox.
Julia K. Fox. Jamie, your mom got in just in time for her birthday and Mother's Day.
Which is always nice because it's her birthday's the 11th, so it always falls around Mother's Day, so I can get that out of one shot.
Mm-hmm. Twofer?
Yeah, nice twofer.
We like to call it a twofer.
They're like, here you go. Here's your Mother's Day birthday gift.
Yeah. If I may, I was always a fan of Twofer Grace more than Topher. Always.
Wow. Deep pull.
So, and then last night was one of our producer, Josh Negrin's little housewarming, for anyone who's watching that wasn't invited. And your niece,
Yes.
Jaden,
Who's 15.
who's 15, got to attend.
Yes.
How was that for you?
It was odd seeing her standing there drinking out of a red Solo cup. Like that kind of disheartened me a little bit. But no, she was doing.
Good at beer pong?
No, we played Cards Against Humanity and she did very well.
She did?
Yes. Hers was, she won a point on, she had to fill in the blank for, here's the church, here's the steeple, open the door and fill in the blank. And she chose, here's the church, here's the steeple, open the door and pray the gay away.
Pray the gay away.
That was her, and she was
That's
like,
fantastic.
I was
Yeah.
like, you get a point.
Wow,
you got a point on that
15-year-old,
one. Yes.
hipper than hip.
I was impressed.
Sammy, you were already on television at 15, right?
Yes.
Yes, you were.
Yes.
Might have been local ads, but still.
No, I was on a soap opera when I was 15.
Were you?
Yeah. I was on One Life to Live.
One life to live. You and I have that in common.
Oh, that was your first gig also?
Well, not my first, but I
Well,
did.
your first on TV gig.
I'm happy to say, if not my proudest moment, I appeared as myself.
Oh, I did not.
Oh,
I played Hector.
did you?
Yeah.
Hector,
Hector, as I like to call him, Hector the Juggling Fool.
if I may, with the same beard you have now.
Yeah, unchanged.
Oh, wasn't that you got hired because you could juggle?
That is correct.
That was it.
They needed a teenager who could juggle. And I had it on my resume, and unlike the other two kids they brought in, I was not lying on my resume when I wrote I could juggle.
It wasn't one of those, do you ride a horse, I got a saddle
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
trunk?
No, it was not. No.
Well, that's fantastic. So, gosh, I wish there was some other kind of news we could talk about.
No, I can't think of it. Oh, I was doing a week on this Disney Channel show.
Did you?
Last week, yeah, it was real great. Good experience, good people. That'll air sometime this
That's
summer.
for television.
That's for TV.
Yeah, I mentioned on this show a couple of times I did a big pilot this year.
Did you?
I did.
What was it
A
called?
former guest, Sean Ryan, he
Yeah.
of The Shield and many other wonderful things,
Wow.
did the Beverly Hills Cop pilot.
Beverly Hills, what a pedigree.
And Eddie Murphy agreed to be in it.
Eddie fucking Murphy
Yeah.
and Sean Ryan.
And Nikki Fink, Hollywood Reporter, and The Wrap all said it's a lock. Put out a top 10 list of pilots guaranteed to go. Don't you know, at
So, what's your time
5:59
slot?
p.m. on Friday, we got the word that CBS passed. Tested through the roof.
Mother
CBS said, we don't.
fuckers.
We don't. So Eddie Murphy had a $10 million kill fee. We had this deck stacked like I've never experienced. Now, I've done enough pilots that have failed to know you do not emotionally attach. Like the other cast members over a shoot and we're all getting buddy and I'm like, don't touch. Like the surgeon who can't get emotionally involved with his patients. Don't touch. Expectations are a disappointment. I know these things. I've been at this a while. And then that bitch, Nikki Fink, and the people at The Wrap and Hollywood Reporter slowly pulled me in with, it's a lock. Prognosticators. So as a gambler, I kept saying to all my friends, you included, this is the worst jinx on the planet. When they're saying you're a lock, you're fucked. There's no other guarantee to get fucked than having people say you're a lock. You cannot lose. So Eddie Murphy will get a check for $10 million. And I had one of the hardest, worst, bad beat, cold deck, slow rolls of my career at 5:59 p.m. on Friday.
I have to get a real job. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know.
It's true.
Oh my God.
Yeah. My first call was to my stand-up agent. So there are still gigs over the summer, right? Oh, you gotta laugh, people, or you'll cry. Barry Sonnenfeld, who was a guest on the show right before we started shooting, that relationship started because of this pilot, as well as Sean Ryan. Extraordinary creative people who I'm now fans of, and they allege they're fans of mine. So more to come. But holy fuck, was that a cold cock? Right to the face. A cold cock to the fish. What other news? Oh, thank you, Jason Calcanis, for our brand new cameras. Aren't they terrific?
I like them.
Yeah, right? HD for all that
HD goodness.
open pore availability.
Yeah.
Facial pore.
Hey, speak for yourself. I have good skin.
Turn that down.
You have great Italian skin.
Right.
Yeah, let's bounce a little less light off Sammy's forehead.
Thank you.
I'm
Scaring
not-
the children.
I'm not sure. Oh, I gotta get a new face. Hey, if you're watching us on the YouTube, write to us immediately and with some questions for our guests today. We've already got some, and I'm going to open that up so Jamie can forward them to me. And write a review on the iTunes, subscribe to us, all those things, you bastards. Again, thanks to Jason Calcanis for our new cameras. We're 4 years old, and we've asked you to participate in the show. You've done an incredible job. And it's been a while since we've had a Larry King game winner. We have one today. What you do is you write into contact@kevinpollakschatShow.com and you offer up your own Larry King game, or write to me at Kevin Pollak on Twitter. And it's real simple. Bad Larry King impression if you're going to do the video form. If you're writing these, don't worry about your Larry King impression. But really, we want that moment where Larry shares something about himself right before he goes to the phones that no one needs to know. That little awkward moment of Larry's that we miss. And remember, if the name of the city is funny sounding, it's helpful. This week's winner is, this is a Twitter name, believe it or not, at PotsNPAns62. What's happening?
What happened to Charlie?
I needed what happened to Charlie? I needed a Sherpa to finish that, by the way.
Yeah.
Help me to the end. But here's his Larry King game. A blind squirrel sniffed my nuts the other day and thought, I'll pass. Wilmerding, PA, hello. I wanted someone else to pass other than CBS.
Oh.
That's why I chose that winner. So congratulations to that Larry King game winner. We will send him a T-shirt if he DMs me with his shirt size and address, which he did not do. Contact at KevinPollakChatShow.com. Write to us. Tell us how you do the show and participate your asses off. Remember, new episodes, if you missed them live, are dropping on Earwolf. Airwolf.com, the greatest comedy podcast network on the planet, every other Thursday. So check that out. And I think we're good. Kenny, anything? No. Kenny's rock solid. Okay, last thing will just be upcoming guests next Sunday live. Don't miss this, you idiots. Comedy royalty, British comedy royalty, Stephen Merchant. That's a PH on Stephen. Don't approve.
How tall is he? 8 feet, 9 feet?
He is 6 feet 11. He really is ridiculous. And that's all I'm going to talk about for the first 14 minutes, I'm excited. Because we have to set the cameras special so that we come off as
We
the
could bring
same
in new
height.
cameras for him, right?
The two-shot.
Big wide angle. Gonna lay him on their side.
Yeah, camera's going to be set outside of the car. Jason Mantzoukas,
Love
coming
him.
up June 2nd, I believe.
I love him.
Followed June 9th by Michael C. Hall for Dexter fans. Can't get enough. Hilarious and now a world-renowned comedian and Twitter god, Rob Delaney. Internet sensation and filmmaker Freddie W. Or Freddie Wong, for those of you that need the full name, idiots. Yeah, you're not buffering. I passed out for just a moment. Okay, that is all the business we've got for you. I'm not going to introduce our guests, so brace yourselves. Very exciting. We've had kind of a string of filmmakers, and I'm really sorry that on June 2nd we're going to break the string, but today it continues. It's quite rare for any writer, director, filmmaker to reinvent the wheel. Our filmmaker today and his brother did that very thing. Their first crack at the bat, which is another insane rarity. We've all heard so very much about the two of them, but through Jason McIntyre's dossier research today, we have some deep and disturbing things to discuss. So let's just begin. Peter Farrelly, hello.
How are you? I have to tell you, that was very hard for me to bite my tongue during that whole thing because about 10 things came up that I wanted to jump in on.
Please do now.
Number one is my wife and my mother were born right around Mother's Day. My wife's May 17th, my mother is May 2nd.
Wow.
So I know that thing. It is a twofer thing. Like this morning, my daughter came in and said, "What'd you get, Mom?" I said, "Well, her birthday's next week, so I'm gonna double up on it, you know." I also wanted to say,
Expectation?
you were talking about the first thing you ever did, or
Yeah, One Life to Live.
You know, the first thing I ever did, you were in, which was Out on a Whim, Paul Reiser.
Holy shit.
That's the first thing I ever wrote. Yeah, did they get that in the research?
No.
Yes.
We actually worked together.
Yes, we did.
0 degrees of separation.
I know, that was the very first thing. It was 1987, I believe, and
Holy
I wrote it
shit.
with Bennett Yellen. It was for HBO. It was
Right.
Paul Reiser's special, and I met you on it. I was like, you know, hanging in the back, and
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I'd already been taught, even at that early stage of show business, do not talk to the writers.
No, we were getting, you know, believe me, we got nothing there. But actually, the thing that did come out of that, but besides the fact that it was a great experience, and Reiser's just such a sweet guy.
Was
and
that before Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
It really was the first thing.
Oh, it was the first thing I ever had
Before the Zucker
produced.
brothers, because the research showed that was.
Okay, that's you know what, you're right.
Aha.
Except that never ran.
I'll
You know,
say.
we had done a thing for the Zucker brothers. I'd written many scripts that had never seen the light of day, and we did this one show called Our Planet Tonight,
Right.
with the Zucker brothers, John Houseman, and you know, it was sort of like a 60 Minutes, except like we had like seeing eye cats and stories like that. Yeah, that was the first thing that I could actually call home and say, "Hey, turn on the TV. It's, you know, it's on. It's going to be on tonight."
Right.
Yeah, but it was a great thing. But also, we met Charlie Wessler,
Yes.
who produced it, and he
Yes.
ended up producing Dumb and Dumber. He got that made.
And
blah, blah, blah.
43, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Was something.
You didn't have to mention that one, but
somehow
yeah.
his idea, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Oh, no, I have the full research.
Yeah.
In fact, Phoenixville, PA, for 90 seconds was your birthplace, right?
My father was in the Army 4 years, you know, and that was, I was born at Valley Forge Army Hospital, and my brother was born down in North Carolina at Fort Bragg. So we were just there, but we're Rhode Islanders. That's where they were from, and we ended up back there. I don't remember,
Yeah.
you know, those times.
Now, Jamie, being a PA
Native?
native, Phoenixville ring a bell to you?
No.
Other than the home of this fort?
Right outside Philly. Yeah, so it's, you know,
Oh, that's the other side of the state.
She's Pittsburgh.
I'm Western
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
Right.
That's the other
Which is a
side.
great town. Loved Pittsburgh. We shot Kingpin.
Yeah, I just remember that was right. The Kingpin was filmed there. One of the they use many bowling alleys, but there was this great divey, like really small, like I think it had like a dozen lanes, maybe, if that, bowling alley that was across the street from my mom's real estate practice in Ambridge, and I remember they were filming there, and it was a big deal at the time.
That was a ball.
Had you been to Pittsburgh prior to that?
No.
Here's what I found shocking: the topography. I thought flat, ugly, gray
very
steel
hilly,
town. Looked like my hometown of San Francisco with the hills and the bridges and the.
And I was expecting a wall of smog. You know, you remember as a kid, you just always saw that. You know, heard about and it was beautiful. It was clean. Apparently, it's not as clean as it looks because it's still up in the top like 10, dirtiest cities. But you would never know it. It seems so green and countryish.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, I really liked it. And they had. I remember the other thing is a lot of good Italian food.
Yes.
In
Sabatini's?
Pittsburgh, big Italian.
No,
What?
never.
Sabatini's?
That might have been Baltimore. Sorry.
Providence.
That wasn't.
Providence, Rhode Island. I'm from, Rhode Island, and Providence has, Rhode Island's an Italian state. I'm not Italian, but everybody, if you're from Rhode Island, you got a little Italian in you. And the food, the Italian food in Rhode Island is authentic. Like people from Boston go down to Providence to get the real deal. And I remember going to a couple places in Pittsburgh thinking, this is real Italian food. This, it's not spaghetti and meatballs.
Right.
It was really good stuff.
Well, like Bloomfield is our little Italy, that area. So yeah, there's a lot of good places there. And I'm Italian. My family's Italian.
I noticed that your people are Italian every now and then when your temper flares. That's when I realize.
I do have an Italian temper.
With an Italian.
Well, the boy from New Jersey, I don't know anything about good Italian food. Not New Jersey. No.
We're in New Jersey.
Fort Lee.
Yeah, well, Fort Lee, okay, New Jersey and actually New Jersey and Rhode Island are pretty much the same states. They're so similar, and the people are the same. I always identify with New Jersey people, always like, whereas like Connecticut and say Vermont are the same,
Right.
But Rhode Island, Jersey, they almost have the same accent, and it's very Italian and middle class, it's good people.
Nice.
Did you ever try to pass by saying your name was Farrelly?
Farrelly. Peter Farrelly. Well, that's what they call me, actually, the Farrellys or the Follies.
Right.
Peter Farrelly, if you're not in Boston or on the Cape, the Follies. But actually, the area I live, there's a new accent every 10 miles, honestly. Yeah. And there's a creepy little accent that comes from my area. Not everybody has it, but enough people where the R's are V's. The R's are V's.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, it's basically a laziness. Instead of saying Farrelly, you say Favely. You don't want to roll that R. It's just the Favely. So the Favelies, Peter Farrelly, they're going down to Florida. Yeah, they're going to stay at the Chevenin. There's a big Chavity down there, down at the Chevenin. The Favelies are going down to Florida. It's a lazy, ugly, horrific accent that not everybody has, but enough. Like some of my best friends are like, Mom, the Favelies are having a thing. Like, I'm like, how long have you known me? How am I still Favely? You've known me for 25 years. Yeah. Favely?
Yeah.
What? What am I saying? They don't hear it.
No. Yeah. Now, you mentioned something in the outer studio area. We have lots to talk about. Certain things I haven't talked about before. And you mentioned something. Oh, you saw a UFO, and I rushed in here to write it down, and I didn't. And somehow I remembered.
Well, we'll get it next show.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about it at all. So we need to kind of dive right into that, if you don't mind.
Not at all. But first of all, I want to, before I forget, the other thing I want to mention
I'm going to write down UFO because now I'm convinced.
No, I'm not going to forget that.
Okay.
And I've often wanted to tell that story, but didn't want to seem crazy. But this is a good show to do it on. Stephen Merchant.
Yes.
Stephen Merchant, to me, is definitely top 5 funny guys on earth today.
Wow.
He is. I would put all my money on Stephen Merchant in the next 20 years being the guy. He is going to be huge. He's so funny.
And now, have you seen he has a stand-up special, apparently.
Yeah.
And it's segueing into an HBO series.
Right.
Based on kind of the same thing, which is his life as a ladies' man. You're getting this. Please tell me what, because I
don't always bet on the right thing, by the way. I put my last a lot of money into gluten recently. No, no, he.
You have a gluten ranch.
Yeah. It was stupid. About 10 years ago, I bought up all the gluten. I thought this is going to be huge.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm probably stealing that from somebody because someone told me that, so I'm just going to take credit for not. That's not my thing. But anyway,
got it on TV
I mean,
first.
everyone thought Stephen was funny the first time they heard either the Ricky Gervais podcast, or they saw them together, or they watched.
the only time the first time I laid eyes on Stephen Merchant was on Extras. Was it Extras?
Yeah,
yeah,
probably.
Extras. And the first time I saw him, I just giggled. He hadn't said a word yet, and I was giggling. And I watched that show for him. That him coming in. Look, obviously Ricky Gervais is spectacular, but Merchant kills me. He kills me, and he always has killed me. And we put him in Hall Pass, and he was just so funny in and off. Just one of those guys, just naturally funny. Anyway, you're lucky to have him next week.
We certainly are. No, we met him at a movie night at a friend's place. Baby Reitman, as we're apt to call him. Yeah, just immediately taken aback and terrific. And thrilled that he's doing an HBO series.
And by the way, he does horribly with women, which shocks me because he's such a charming guy, and yet he's never going to. I'm always like, what?
Can't close.
No, he's got something going.
He's got
there.
the Richard Kind problem. I can't close. Is it me?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, and thank you for remembering.
Yes.
I thought I saw a UFO. Turns out I was just really, really stoned.
Yeah.
I was with some friends in a car, and there's really slow-moving lights overhead, and we were all just sitting there and not getting excited, just like, that's a UFO, right? Yeah, it absolutely is. And there were three of us in the car, and we were just staring at it. And it was fantastic, and it was perfect. It was happening, and nobody was losing their shit about it. They were just like, yeah, that's definitely a UFO, right?
How was it? Was it saucer shaped, or was it lights, or what was it?
Well, let's be clear. It was a dirigible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a blimp.
It turned out to be.
We
a blimp.
eventually got out of the car because it was moving so slowly. We said,
Right.
let's get another look.
Yeah.
And we got out of the car. We went, oh yeah.
What does that say on the side of it?
It says Goodyear.
Yeah. What does that say? Are they sending us a message? They're sending a message.
Have a good year. No, it was at night, so we just saw lights, but they were moving so fucking slowly, and it was so huge, you couldn't make out the outline of it. But turned out it was a dirigible.
Yeah.
So in your case, give us the setting.
Okay, let me say this.
Sure.
I'll preface it by saying this. If I hadn't have seen this, and I had never seen anything remotely resembling, I would say it's bullshit. I wouldn't believe it. I'd say it's fucked up. No way.
You reserve anyone the right to say so.
Yes,
after you
and they're
going to
say that, but I understand. Like, I acknowledge. I say I don't start it and say, and then this happened, and the people are like, what are you crazy? I know how crazy it sounds, so I'm giving you that up front. So knock that bullshit out of there.
Which is also why we have an exclusive here.
But I am telling you, everything I'm about to say, this is on my children. This happened. Now I'm not gonna. I don't know what it was. I can't say it was aliens from whatever. I don't know. But this is what happened. It happened on Halloween night, 1975. Okay, I was a freshman in college, and I went to Providence College. But that night, my buddy and I drove down to the University of Rhode Island to visit friends, and we partied, went to parties, hung out, drank beer, did it all. Ended up at a pizza parlor, ate, and then we had to drive home. And we were driving home late. Excuse me. It's probably 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were cruising back, and it was about an hour drive for us. And it was on. We had gotten on off Route 95 onto Route 295, which is more rural, and there were no cars on the road. And I do remember, and we weren't talking. We were just listening to the radio, listening to tunes, cruising along. It's the end of the night. We're done. And we're cruising down this long straightaway where you could see, like, kind of for about 10 miles. You could see, like, down for about 5 and up about 5. You know what I'm saying? Like one of those long.
Sure.
Yeah. And coming down the road, the highway toward us, over the highway is a light. It appears to be like a plane or a helicopter or something coming down toward us. And I see it, but I'm not thinking anything of it. But cruising along, listening to the radio. As it gets bigger, the lights get bigger and bigger. I'm thinking, wow, that's a big helicopter. It's clearly like low, so it's got to be some kind of helicopter type thing. Again, we're not saying a word. It's getting closer and closer. The lights are getting bigger and bigger, and it's not going fast. It's going, taking its time, coming down the highway. And And I remember, like, among other things, whatever I'm thinking, listen to radio, this, wow, that's a really big helicopter. Then it gets bigger. I'm thinking, well, that must be like a military helicopter. This is in my head. And it's approaching and approaching. It's big and big. And we haven't said a peep, you know, just see that it's kind of like not even paying attention. And all of a sudden, as it's coming upon us, suddenly it's a massive thing. And it is a rectangular shaped craft, I will say, okay? It's rectangular, like, it's hard to say how big it is because you can't tell how high it is, but it seems to be a few hundred yards up, maybe it's 1,000 feet up, I don't know. It's not that high, but it's rectangular shape and there's zillions of lights under it. And the lights are going back, like sideways, like shoot, back and forth. And then the other ones, no sound by the way. And the other ones are going this way. Like, so they're kind of crossing each other, all these lights. And then there are a few lights that are doing like a wind, like a fan. They're like going around a circle lights, and they're all over the place going. And it is like fucking lighting the goddamn highway up over, you know, as we're going through it, and it's taking its time. I'm telling you, it's right out of Star Wars. You know, when you see the thing come over you and it just keeps going, and we're like, and I'm looking up at like, what the? And I look over at my friend, and my friend looks at me and goes, "It's a fucking flying sausage!" And I think, ugh. And I remember my legs.
Is that a quote, by the way?
My legs went weak. It was like completely rubbery. Like I remember pushing my foot on the gas. It was an effort. Like I literally lost all the blood in my legs somehow. And my wife has said, "Do you think you guys were, you know?" No, I don't think we were. But I'm telling you, my legs went completely numb out of fear. I'm assuming, but I've never had that sensation before, where I was pushing down the gas, like, "Oh my God, let's go, let's go!" And I took off, and we cruised down the highway. And as I'm cruising off, my heart, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and I could see it just heading away down the highway, down Route 295. Okay, and I remember the guy had passed us about 10 minutes earlier in a car, so we said, let's find that guy, see if he saw it, because there's not a car on the road. So I drove about 110 miles an hour until we got to our exit, which was another 7 or 8 miles, excuse me, and never caught up with the guy. And I dropped my buddy off, and then I went home, and I remember on the way home, I was just like terrified. I was looking around, is this thing gonna come back for me? Came home, woke my parents up, woke my sister up. I'm like, I just saw a flying saucer. It's the whole thing. They're like, go to bed. I said, no. Anyway,
How old were you again?
18.
Okay.
So the next morning I get up to go to school, and I always listen to the same radio station every morning. It was an AM station because I only had an AM radio in my car. And,
back in the 50s.
Yeah. And I'm listening to it and cruising to school, and a thing comes on. It says, if anybody has reported seeing an unidentified flying object, please call this number. I said, geez, got a pen, wrote it down, got to school, went to a phone booth. Yeah, I saw it last night. Did people see it? They said, no, we're just taking a poll. I said, what? I said, I just saw the thing last night. And you hear this thing? And come on, who saw it? And they said, no, we're just taking a poll. So I was like, what's your name? Where do you live? All this. We'll get back to you if we need to. I said, oh, okay, great. So for the next 2 weeks, everybody I see, I saw a flying saucer. It's a thing. It was a real one, you know. And finally, after a couple weeks, I'm thinking, wait a second, who was that? What was that? Because that number, that thing that came on the radio station, it was the big radio station, Rhode Island, never came back. That no. I listened to it every morning at the same time. They never asked for that again. So I called that number disconnected.
Sure. 2
weeks later, disconnected number.
We're just taking a poll.
Yeah. So years later, I watched a video. It was called UFOs in America. It was the history of UFOs in America. And they said that the most sightings ever in the U.S. were in the northeastern United States in the fall of '75. That's when I had seen mine. And their theory is that because there were a lot of nuclear power plants being built and nuclear subs at New London, which was only like a half hour from where I was when I saw this thing. They don't know why, but you know these things seem to be attracted to that. Now, on that day, by the way, like there was a part of me that thought, well, that could be a military thing. You know,
sure.
You know, I don't know what it is.
They don't want you to know.
Well, it could certainly be like it was just cruising down the highway, and maybe it's some military thing that we don't know about. But it was nothing that I've ever heard about. Now, you know, we're 38 years later, and this thing still doesn't exist, this big rectangular thing.
With no sound.
With no sound that cruises over us. So, you know, I feel confident that it was, you know, I mean, it was an unidentified flying object, but whether it was of this planet or whatever, who knows? But I'm just telling you, that's my story.
Well, that's the first and best firsthand experience that I've heard.
Well, I have a lot of people, even having seen this, I'm suspicious of stories. Like people say, I saw one. I said, what'd you see? They said, well, I was in the desert and I saw this light that was zigzagging in a way that planes can't zigzag. That's a light. That's not a UFO. Yeah. I had a ship come over my car. You know, that's what I saw. And that's the God's honest truth.
Yeah, it sounds like it was also the size of like a battleship. Like it was ridiculous. It was like the length of a football field kind of thing.
But again, it was hard to tell because the perspective, it's at night and it's coming over you and it's long, it's coming slow, and you're looking like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on?
Like it's never going to end.
Yeah, but on the other hand, is that 100 yards up or is that like 3,000 feet? I don't know.
No.
It's hard to tell the perspective, but it's huge and it's clear rectangle. And by the way, that's the thing that bothers me is
we don't have those.
I never hear that one. People are always talking about flying saucers or things, but I've never heard the rectangle.
Yeah.
This was a complete rectangle, a long thing.
We heard the cigar shape.
Yeah.
That comes up every now and then.
Yeah.
But the dining room table.
Yeah. I'm assuming that state police must have seen it because it came right down 295. There was probably some statey out. He picked up on it. And somehow they wanted to know what it was. Who knows who put that number out there?
Yeah.
But I called in the next day, gave all my information, and boom, 2 weeks later.
We're just taking a poll, they said.
Yeah, just taking a poll.
Wow. That is fucking fantastic.
Yeah. So can I leave?
Now, when did Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith show up at your place with the magic forget everything wand?
Yeah.
That didn't happen yet?
So your wife, when she heard the story about the rubbery legs, said, do you think you were abducted?
Oh, yeah. She said, could you have been abducted? I said, I don't know. I don't think I was abducted. She goes, well, how do you know? I said, I wasn't abducted. She goes, you went weak. I said, yeah, I went weak out of fear, you know. So she said, why don't you see a hypnotist and see if they could put you under and take you back to that moment and see what happens. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll go do that. So I went to a guy, it was $350.
Sure.
Okay, he's a good hypnotist. And I went to him, and he put me under, ching, ging, ging. He's like, are you hypnotized? I said, no. He goes, okay, hold on, come on, you got to do this. He does all the stuff. He goes, now, are you hypnotized? I said, no. And he did it like 3 times. Finally, he says, you're fighting me, man. He goes, you can't fight me. You got to just go with it. Go with it.
Lie to
I was like, okay. So then he's doing it, and he's like, are you hypnotized? I said, yes. He says, are you back at that night? I said, yes. He says, are you really hypnotized? No. So he gave me my money back. He says, you know what? There's 3% of the people I can't hypnotize. I can't get them under, and you're one of them. I just can't. So he gave me $350. I just left. Couldn't go under. Seriously.
I went to one 6 years ago, a couple of weeks ago, to get off the butts, and it worked incredible.
Really?
Like turned a switch in my head.
Wow.
Sent 30 people since. So I know there are a greater number of people who can be hypnotized, but there was never the clink, clink, clink. I noticed a lot of sound effects in your stories thus far.
Yeah.
And so you've set a bit of a precedent that I'm going to need to continue throughout the rest. Like when the spaceship was silent, the lights still had sound.
Yes, but they didn't, and I was clear. It was just that feeling of they were going back and forth like fast.
But without that sound.
Without that sound, and the spinning lights is the one. Those are the ones I remember the most. It was like a fan of lights, like just buzzing around, and a lot of them. And it was.
It sounds like the formation of the lights and what those lights were doing made it instantly unnerving. Because the shape is one thing, but lights you've never seen before do those things. Yeah. When you were telling the story, that was the part that instantly, this is something that's never happened before, and never will.
Well, again, like I tell people, I can't say what it was, but what I just said, every word is true. Yeah. And that's the God's honest truth. It just happened, and
like you said, also 30-something years later, we've yet to have those.
There was at that night. The next day, I would have said 90% of me believes I'd seen some sort of a
American-made.
No, UFO.
Oh.
But 10%, I thought, well, maybe it's a military thing. They're just testing it at night, just running it up the thing. but it wasn't impressive that it was a rectangle and it was quiet, it was over us, and you know, again, you're in a car though, so how quiet was it? You know, I'm driving along. But I didn't hear, it wasn't like a ding, you know.
Well, those lights would suggest some sound.
Yeah, but it was, so there was a part of me thinking, well, it could be a military thing, I don't know, but now I don't think it was.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to hear about your brief stint in Las Vegas. What age was that?
Okay, well, when I was 24.
Sure.
You know, they say 25 is the age of reason. That's what they, and I do agree to that to a certain extent. It's sort of the time where you, like, especially, I think college kids kind of suck. You know, like when you're in college, your life is easy, you're partying, you're having a good thing. You think the world is your oyster. I know, like I look back at myself in college and I don't like that guy. It was a little arrogant, little like, you know, expecting like the world is yours. And then you get out and you get your ass kicked for 2 or 3 years, you know, and you find out like this isn't easy out there. You know, you're going to, like, it's hard to, you know, find what to do in the world. And you know, suddenly it's not, you're not living in a college, you know, a dorm or apartment, and the world gets harder. And I noticed that like kids right out of college, like 22-year-olds, they come out not nuts about them. They've just got kind of an attitude like, okay, I'll see, you know. And then once they've had their asses kicked for a while, then they become better people. They become humble and they become appreciative. And that's kind of how I was. And you know, when I was like 24 years old, I remember on my birthday thinking, I don't like me. I don't like who I am. I don't like what I do.
Self-aware at 24.
Yeah, I just remember not being proud of myself. Feeling like, God, you never did it. You've like, you know, it's okay when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 16, 17, you're running around, you're, you know, chasing chicks and you're drinking and you're partying and whatever, just having a good time. But then at some point I woke up and I thought, I'm not 20 anymore, I'm 24. And I just wasn't proud of that guy. I was thinking, I got to make a change in my life. And I had been, for about a year or two, I'd been thinking, God, I wish I had majored in English, because I was an accounting major in college. And I started thinking, I wish I'd majored in English. I would have become a writer, but too late. You know, I missed it.
Why do you suppose you had that sense of, I would have become a writer? What was it in you that, you know, as opposed to some other of the arts?
Well, I never had an ambition in my life until I was 23 or so, ever. Except, you know, as a little kid, I thought, well, it'd be nice to be, you know, Major League Baseball player, play in the NBA. That'd be nice.
Sure.
You know, but other than that...
Let's count the Farrellys in the NBA.
Yeah.
There's...
yeah. So...
No, give me a second. I know.
Yeah.
Sammy, can you help? Reginald Farrelly?
Reginald Farrelly.
Yeah.
Plays for the...
forward for the Jazz.
Right. But when I started college, I should say, the first week I went to my advisor and she said, what's your major? I said, I don't know. And she goes, what do you want major? And I said, I really have no idea. She said, well, you have good math boards. How about accounting? I said, all right. So I majored in accounting for 4 years on that 2-second thing. How about accounting? Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Yeah. I majored in it. Day I graduated from college with a 2.0. My father looked at me and said, so what now? What are you doing? I said, I don't know. He said, God damn it, you're 22 years old. When I was 7, I knew I wanted to be a doctor. I became a doctor. You're 22, you know nothing? I said, no. And I honestly did. You know that teacher you get in high school or college, the one teacher that grabs you and like says, hey, listen to me.
If you're lucky.
Never got him.
You never had him?
Never had him.
Mr. Shamani in my...
Never had the guy.
My experience.
By the way, that has nothing to do with the teachers. I had awesome teachers. I was unreachable. I really was.
Right.
I don't blame my teachers at all. They might have made an effort, but I wasn't reachable.
Right.
I always tell the story when I was in high school. I was sleeping on my desk, just fast asleep. I'd go in, I'd just go right out. And there were probably 35 kids in the class, all boys, and it was a Catholic high school, and they're throwing shit and talking and stuff. And there was an English teacher, a woman. And in my sleep, I hear like, Farrelly. I sat up. Like,
you had the wherewithal to wipe off the drool.
How's that? And she's teaching, and I looked at the guy next to me. I said, did she say my name? He says, yeah, she said, why can't you all be like Farrelly and leave me alone?
Way to set the precedent.
Yeah.
What's happening here, by the way? What is that?
So anyway.
Yes. So there you were.
Turned 24, and I said, okay, you should try to become a writer. If you're going to do it now. And I moved to Las Vegas. I quit my job. I was a salesman in Boston.
Right.
Working for a shipping line, which I loved. I worked for a company called US Lines. That was sensational. I was in the European export division. We had a bunch of great guys. I had a great boss, a guy named Ed Long, another guy, Steve Stewart, Jimmy Parks, all these great guys. And we were out and, everybody, we work hard and play hard. It was just the type of thing. But I wasn't good at what I did. And I didn't like what I did. I liked hanging with these guys. I liked the thing. But I didn't walk into a meeting thinking, I'm going to prove, I'm going to be the best salesman here. It wasn't in me. Right. And
so I'm going to go to Las Vegas to be a writer?
I had a friend who lived in Las Vegas at the time. And when I quit my job, I had never written anything. I had never majored, like I said, I was embarrassed to say I want to be a writer. Like a lot of people who get into the arts at first, can't admit it. So I drove out to Las Vegas. I told all my friends in Boston I was going to go look for a job in Las Vegas. They're like, why Vegas? It's coming up. It's, Vegas. So I moved to Las Vegas, and I lived there for about 3 or 4 months with a friend of mine. And I just wrote all day long. I wrote probably 10 to 15 pages a day for 3 months. I actually wrote a whole novel that was like 700 pages in those 3 or 4 months. I couldn't stop writing. I was just scratching down stuff. Didn't know where I was going, by the way.
Right. No outline.
No, just a vague idea of a first-person kid, story, and got it.
Semi-autobiographical.
Yeah, semi-autobiographical. Like, when I was a junior in high school, I got sent away to a boarding school because, again, I was a disaster. My parents didn't know what to do with me. So they sent me to a boarding school in Connecticut. And while there, I noticed that every year they brought in 4 or 5 inner-city kids. And they gave them scholarships, and they brought them. And the kids were gone by November. They were all gone. It was such a culture clash. And they didn't really have the support for these kids. And I thought, that's a good story, kids like that.
Right.
So I based it on that and started writing a book, and lived in Vegas for 3-4 months.
Timothy Dildo Dunphy?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That ended up being the book years later, Outside Providence.
Right.
Yeah.
But the first version was 700 pages and written 15 pages a day.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't recommend that book. Please, if you're going to read a book, read The Comedy Writer. It's much better. But anyway, that book was my first thing. I was untrained. It's amazing it got published. And
how did it get published?
Well, I ended up going to grad school. So after that, after 3 or 4 months, once I had a chunk of something, I came home and I admitted, hey, look, I want to try to be a writer. And, again, it wasn't easy. You come home like, hey, Hemingway, fucking Hemingway, fucking Hemingway wants to be a writer. Get over here, come here. Fucking Hemingway, you writing a book, right? Tell me, you're fucking Hemingway writing a book, aren't you? I said, yeah, I'm writing a book. What the fuck do you want to write? Come on, who's going to read your book? I'm like, yeah, I know.
These are terrific people you're hanging out with. Yeah.
And so it was like humiliating and everything. But I moved to Cape Cod, and I lived there for a couple years just as a waiter. I was waiting tables, and I continued to write and clean up my writing. And I wrote the whole thing longhand, by the way.
Wow.
So then I had to spend about 6 months
learning how to type?
No.
Oh.
That was impossible. So what I did something even dumber. I wrote the entire thing over. I printed it. The entire 600 pages I'd gotten it down to, or 500 pages I'd gotten it down to by then. I rewrote the whole thing. It took me like 3 or 4 months. I sat there every day, and because it was unlegible what I'd written, so I started, printing out the whole thing, and I printed out the whole book in my handwriting, and then gave it to a typist, and she typed it up. Yeah, but anyway. So while there, I waited on a guy one time, and he said, somehow we got talking, he said he teaches writing at UMass. And I said, oh, well, Yeah, but I'm already out of school. You know, I told him I was a writer. He said, you should go. I said, I already went to college. He goes, this is grad school. I said, really? They have grad school writing? He says, yeah, creative writing, grad school. I said, I didn't know that existed. He said, yeah. I said, but I couldn't get in anyway because I had a 2.0 in college. And he said, no, they judge it on your writing. That's it. You just send in like 40 pages, and if they like it, they'll let you in. Applied, got in miraculously, stayed there a year and a half, transferred to Columbia. Then while at Columbia, then I was with some. UMass was great, but Columbia was better. It was just the people.
Better for you.
It was better for me because besides the quality of writing in the program, there were amazing writers in there. There was also the teachers. You know, we had like John Irving would come and teach for a week or two, and Norman Mailer came.
Jesus.
It was crazy. And if they read your stuff and liked it, they'd take it to their guys. Say, hey, this kid's pretty good. Check it out. So everybody started getting their books published. When I was there, it was like I think they had like 20 people in the program per year, and within 5 years, at least 12 or 15 had books published.
Only 20 people a year got in?
Yeah.
And you got in based on the writing when you transferred from UMass as well?
Yeah.
Well, that had to felt great.
Yeah.
Like you had chosen wisely, finally, with what the fuck you're going to do with your life.
Yeah, well, things were going well. And then I got my book published. And then while I was there, by the way, I wrote my first screenplay with Bennett Yellen, who I'd met at UMass. And we sold it and came out to L.A. And that was, that's how I got into the biz.
Right. That was the time you go west, young man.
Yes, exactly.
Shortly before the Paul Reiser experience.
Well, the first thing I wrote was called Dust to Dust, and it was basically the beginning of Dumb and Dumber. It was those two characters, only they worked in a down-and-out funeral parlor, and it didn't sell, but it got a lot of interest. It got like Eddie Murphy Productions loved it, and the Zuckers loved it, so they hired us to write other projects.
Right.
And then we got in, and we wrote a bunch of screenplays, but we couldn't get them made. In the meantime, Paul Reiser came along.
Yeah, because I remember. Paul wanted to do the special and asked me to be in this one sketch, the hot tub scene or something.
Yeah.
With Michael Pollard.
Yes.
I want to say.
Michael Pollard.
Yeah.
Right?
There were a lot of people in that.
In that tub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember we had Desi Arnaz in the corner. He was hitting the drums after every joke. It was.
Junior, to be clear.
Yeah. Yes. You're right. Ricky, is it Desi? No, Desi Arnaz Jr.
Yeah, it was Little Ricky, I think, in the TV show.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Normally at this time, we'd like to take ourselves a little break to thank our sponsor.
Okay.
Would you allow me?
Please.
Okay. I bet my sponsor, Ting, blows your mobile service provider out of the water. That's right. You heard me. Take it from a real betting man. Ting is the future. Does your provider, let's say, let you pick custom service level from extra small to extra large for voice minutes? Whatever the fuck that means. Text minutes and megabytes of data? Do they? Do you get consistently superior without any overage fees, add-on charges, or penalties? Ting offers all of this and more. No BS and no mystery surrounding your phone bill. No sneaky fees. Non-frustration. Get service like hotspot, three-way calling, call forwarding, and voicemail included with your Palm Plus. Add unlimited devices to a single plan to pool minutes and messages. It's a flat fee for just $6 a month per device. Ting has it all. So why not go to chat.ting.com to save $25 on your new device or $25 in service credit. Do it now, you dick. Save big and support the show, you prick. Don't forget, that's chat.ting.com.
Listeners, audiobooks are not just for octogenarians anymore. Audiobooks are for busy people who love reading, multitasking, and cool people like you and me. Trust me, we're cool. So what are you waiting for? Don't wait until you're ready to get into something this great. Head over to audible.com today, right now, and browse, not right now. I want you to continue listening to them. Head over there soon and browse from their massive selection of audio recordings. If you're concerned you don't have the proper setup to play Audible, don't be. Audible is compatible with iPhones, Windows phones, and all kinds of MP3 players. Thanks to their incredible Whisper Sync technology, you can listen to half a book on your iPod and then switch over to your Kindle without ever losing your place. How about that? Go to audiblepodcast.com/chat right now or later to take advantage of the special offer they're giving our listeners and fans. Free audiobook and a free 30-day trial. That's right, one free audiobook and a 30-day free trial. If you're not sure which book to download, why not download mine? All right? It's called How I Slept My Way to the Middle. Just waiting for the laughter or applause that normally comes after I say that. And it's available to you right now for free at audible.com.
Okay, so let's jump past risers. Do you remember which comedian said, here's the difference between Riser and Seinfeld? One sort of leans in, which is Riser, and says, the thing is this. And Seinfeld leans back and says, I'm thinking, hey. The thing is this. I'm thinking, hey.
Yeah.
So you, in a way, did segue from Riser to the Seinfeld, which, according to Dossier, was 92.
Yeah, but we didn't do much on Seinfeld.
Just a couple episodes.
Only one episode, actually. We wrote a couple scripts. They did one episode.
But a big one for fans, The Virgin.
Yeah, The Virgin. But we didn't write that. We pitched it. What happened was this. Obviously, like everyone else in the world at that time, I wanted to write on that show. It's the best show in TV history at that point. Maybe Breaking Bad's gone ahead of it now, but I don't know.
Well, in terms of comedy.
Yeah, no, there's no better comedy ever. It was groundbreaking. It was just such an amazing show. And so we wanted to be in it, and they set us up a meeting. We went in, we pitched to Jerry and Larry Charles.
Right.
And they were rough, by the way. We came in, the first thing they said was, we don't laugh, so don't let it get to you. Just don't worry about it. I was like, okay. So I pitched them about 15 ideas, and they listened to it. Okay, next. I pitched another. Okay, next. Another. Next. Finally, there was one. Larry said, yeah, that's good. Next. And about 4 months later, we never heard anything. We were disappointed. We thought, well, we didn't get it. No big deal. Moved on. 4 months later, I get a phone call. They said, hey, but the Seinfeld guys called. They forgot that they shot your show. I said, they shot what show? They said, the Virgin thing you pitched them? I said, yeah. They shot it. I said, what do you mean they shot it? They said, they shot it. They had a guy write it and shoot it.
Oh,
I was like, you shitting me. They said, no. And they forgot to call you.
And send you a check.
Yeah. No, it hadn't run yet. And they had just shot it, and then all of a sudden they were like, hey, those guys pitched us that idea.
Oh, my God.
We forgot to, bring them in. And so they called up, and they say, hey, listen, sorry about that. We kind of fucking, got ahead of the, we forgot. But it's your show, and so we're going to give you story credit, and we'll have you do another episode. I said, great. We wrote another episode and never got made. But that was it. But it was, it was nice to have anything to do with Seinfeld at the time.
Well, and it's certainly the sort of thing your agent is allowed to expand on.
Yeah, but also, like, I met Larry years later, or a few years later, and we became good friends. And it's always like, imagine if I had gotten the job on Seinfeld, my whole history would have been different. Because by not getting that job, I continued to write screenplays. And right after that, we did Dumb and Dumber. We wrote Dumb and Dumber, like, 90. And it took us 4 years to get it made. And I basically spent every day for 4 years trying to get that thing made. And it never would have happened. And then we wouldn't be doing what we did.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And you wouldn't have met Brian Doyle or Bill Murray. So a lot has been, as we jump around here, a lot has been said about, there's legend and lore of Bill Murray now has expanded beyond the realms of logic, possibility, and truth. I'm sure there's websites devoted now to Bill Murray's sightings.
Yeah.
That he's, for years, been coming up from behind people in New York, putting his hands over their eyes and whispering, no one will believe you.
Yeah.
And then walking past. And recent photos of him showing up at some soccer game, I think, in Brooklyn, or might have been kickball, sure. And that he doesn't have an agent or a lawyer. There's an 800 number. So where was he in all of this when you guys decided we've got to hire Bill Murray?
Everything I wrote before, from the first script on, 1985, when I started writing screenplays, everyone was for Bill Murray.
Right.
It was in his voice, every one of them. And of course, there's only one Bill Murray. But at the time, everybody tried to be Bill Murray for a while. They all had. If you couldn't get Bill Murray, then you got this guy trying to be Bill Murray, and it was that smart alecky guy. It was the you know, the guy who knew more than the boss, knew more than the teacher, knew more than the sergeant. You know, he was a smart ass. And eventually, and we never got him. We couldn't.
It's one of the hardest licks to pull off, by the way, which makes him that much more of a miracle.
Yeah.
And I think it helps that he has that ridiculous doggish face that flies in the face of his arrogance of the smartass.
Yeah.
So continue. Sorry.
So we eventually we said, okay, we can't continue to do this because we're not getting Bill Murray. So we started writing like guys who knew less than everybody else, and that was Dumb and Dumber.
Right.
We said, this guy, they don't know more than anybody. You know, they're idiots. They don't know more. And we started having some success.
Yeah.
And then when we got Kingpin made, we had this great role for Ernie McCracken. And we thought, wouldn't it be great to get Bill Murray? Well, Randy Quaid had worked with Bill Murray before. And we said, do you think we could get Bill Murray? He goes, yeah, I could get in touch with him. So he called him up, and Randy said, yeah, he's in. You're shitting me. No, really? But does he know when he's shooting? Yeah, he's supposed to shoot on this date. We never heard another peep from him for probably six weeks.
Yeah, first AD, second AD, no one can contact him to set up a shooting schedule.
I don't even know if they had his deal worked out. Like they said, this is what we'll pay you, and he goes, yeah, okay, that's good.
No wardrobe fitting, all the normal things that take place when you hire an actor.
And then the day comes that he's supposed to be shooting, and he shows up on the set. Thank God. We're wondering, like, is he going to come? And all of a sudden, he's here. You're kidding me. No, he's here.
You're kidding me is your response.
Yeah. And he comes walking onto the set, and all I can say is it's one of the happiest moments of my career. When Bill Murray comes onto your movie, and you realize he's going to be in this thing, and the joy you feel being around him was incredible. And anyway, so they fit him, they put him in his stuff. He had come with the idea that he had he'd gone bald. First he started with the afro, and then he'd gone bald. But we'd already been shooting for a month, and we had done that for Woody. Woody had started with a lot of hair, and then he gone bald. And he showed up, he goes, hey, I got an idea that maybe this guy goes bald. And we said, well, Woody has that. And then we thought, wait a second, that's awesome. Why are we fighting it? That's a good thing. So he planned all that thing. And then he walks on the set the first day, and you give him the sides, and he looks at it, and he goes, yeah, okay, I get it. He throws them away, never says one word that you wrote, and it's 10 times better.
Yeah.
10 times better.
You get all the credit.
You can't believe, like, you know, a gravy train with biscuit wheels, things like that. You're like, hi, not you, hi. Just all winging it, all real, all just right off the cuff and genius stuff. He's the only actor you want. There's a couple actors that you would. If an actor goes off the page, you want him to do what you shoot first,
right?
What you wrote first. Right. But except for him, he goes off and even the last scene where he has to get 3 strikes in a row. Okay, they're having the big bowling thing. We were up in Reno at the National Bowling Center. We had 1,000 extras sitting in the place, and I explained. I said, okay, so Bill has to get 3 strikes. And it's going to, it'll take a while, but when he gets one, the first one, you applause at this level, the second one at this level, and the third one go crazy, right? But, make sure, don't lose that slack in between them. 3 in a row, Bill. Strike, strike, strike.
Shut the fuck up.
Place went fucking crazy.
Shut the fuck up.
Fucking crazy. And even the last one pin was like this and just shaboom. Like, yeah.
All caught on film. Yeah.
He's just like 3 in a row. The place was going. It was like they'd watched a perfect game.
Yeah,
A no-hitter. It was so real. They couldn't believe that he did 3 in a row.
Even when it comes to something mathematically difficult, to say the very least, he can improvise brilliant.
Oh. But he's, Bill's Bill's an unusual guy, to say the least.
What kind of socializing is going on during the filming? Is he keeping to himself? Is he?
Bill? No. Bill's with the crew. Bill's like one of the guys. First of all, he's a blue collar guy, loves the crew.
Right.
Hates studio executives.
Sure.
Hates producers.
Agents.
Hates agents.
Lawyers.
Hates suits.
Right.
If a guy with a suit would show up, he'd just say, honestly, you don't want to do this because if he makes eye contact with you, he's going to go at you. He doesn't like suits. He likes Joe Schmo.
Did you see him go at?
Yeah, I've seen him go at a couple guys, but he also, but he does. It's not about. It also like when he sees a wrong, it doesn't matter if it's a 7-year-old girl, a 90-year-old woman, or a 40-year-old muscle guy. He's going after you. He doesn't have that filter that says, well, that's a little kid, I can't do that. Like I've seen him call little girls like, you fucking asshole. You're a fucking asshole. Don't do that.
Finally, somebody's standing up to the little 7-year-old girls.
Yeah. By the way, they were wrong.
Yeah.
But you would think an adult would just say, okay, I'm just going to. He's like, what a fucking asshole you are. Like, that's bullshit. I'm like, okay, Bill, come on. He's like, no, you're a fucking asshole. I actually went over to, it was on the set of a movie, and I went over to the girl's parents. She was actually like 9. And I said, geez, I'm really sorry about this. It's just, and they said, no. This is good. This is good.
She needs to hear this.
Yeah, this is good. But he doesn't suffer fools. He doesn't care. He'll go after whoever he wants. But then afterwards, he's got a heart. He feels bad. Like he's come to me a couple. I've seen him do things. Bill's got a huge heart.
Yeah.
But Bill can't see something that's not right and just let it go. He can't do that. He's got to say, what the fuck? That's wrong. You know. That's just fucked up. You can't do that.
One of the hardest things from any sort of success, but certainly from show business success, is to not lose a sense of self. And if you can somehow avoid that and stay true to your school, I think it empowers your fan base to rally the flag even more intensely.
Yeah.
And he seems to be among a very, very short list of true originals and also true to a school, soup to nuts. Because all I've ever heard is a variation of that, of what you said.
Yeah, he's.
I do like also that you thought in terms of everyone wants to write for that character.
Yeah.
Let's go the other way with Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
Now, that was your first out of the gate. You never directed anything. You never held a camera or gotten anywhere near one, according to the dossier.
Right.
But that script was so instantly hot.
Yeah.
I remember, was it like 93?
Well,
shot in.
We shot it in '94, in the spring of '94. It came out Christmas '94.
Right. So. Okay, so I had done A Few Good Men in '94.
Yeah.
I do Suspects and Casino. So I'm already Harvey Keitel. I'm not allowed to be in comedies, even though I started as a comedian. And my agent says, we're trying to get you to go in on Dumb and Dumber. And I said, let me read the script. Read the script, and I said, you have to get me in. And the word came back was, they don't buy you as this character.
Okay, let me. I actually remember this vividly.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. I remember.
By the way,
no, I remember it really vividly, and this is something that this is interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is one of the bad things about this business is that you say no to 500 actors and you say yes to one.
Sure.
And I don't like that. I don't like saying no to people. I don't like.
But you have to.
Yeah, but
everybody wants
I'm not good at it. I'm the worst. But I vividly remember it came down to you were in the top. It was you. We already had Jim Carrey,
right.
And it was between you, Jeff, and Chris Elliott.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So, by the way, the reason I brought this up was not to have you have to defend your decisions in any way, shape, or form, not that you are, but that when it was explained to me, it actually made sense. It wasn't a struggle for me.
Well, good.
It truly and honestly, which is the reason I brought it up, was to sort of say, it was one of those few moments where the agent said, the feedback is this, and you didn't rail against it saying, no, let me show them what I've got. It was, this is not in my wheelhouse.
Well, honestly, I'm just telling you, sometimes it comes down to.
If those guys aren't believable.
I'm just telling you, it was you three. It was you, Chris, and Jeff. And it just went, Jeff's way.
Yeah.
And but it isn't, you know, you were awesome. I remember it vividly. And by the way, I've had pangs about that over the years. Like when I see you, you know, on TV or something, I think, God, you know, I wonder what he thinks, because you came so close, and I wish you could have gotten it. This happened to me once. I was at a party, and I saw, what's her name, Courtney Cox.
Right.
And I went over, hey, how you doing? And she's good. I said, what's going on? She goes, not much, how are you? I said, good, good. She goes, good. And then nothing. I said, and I didn't know her well, but I'd met her a couple times.
Right.
And I said, is everything cool? She goes, yeah, everything's cool. Everything cool with you? And she just chilled, came over. And finally I said, well, what's going on? Are you pissed at me for something? She goes, okay, you want the truth? I said, yeah. She goes, you fucked me. I said, what do you mean? She said, you told me I had the role in Something About Mary, and then you didn't give it to me. You fucked me.
Wow.
And I said, wait a second. This is like a few years after, this is probably like 5, 6 years after Something About Mary.
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, there was a point when we did want her, by the way, so she's not wrong. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, what happened? She goes, you said I was going to get the role, and then I never got the role. And that was, you know, so I'm sorry if it seems like I'm a little pissed off at you. And I was like, well, okay, I don't remember the details exactly what happened. She goes, yeah, well, that's exactly what happened. So she walks away, and I'm at this party, and I'm like, oh, fuck. I love Courtney Cox, and she hates me. And I'm standing there, and I'm with my wife, and I'm like, God damn, Courtney Cox just ripped into me, and this thing. And then I said, wait a second.
Yeah.
I remember now.
Yeah.
This is what happened. And I called the producer. I said, I'm at a party here, and I just got, you know, ripped into by Courtney Cox. Refresh my memory what happened there. And this is what had happened was we did send it to Courtney Cox first. And Courtney Cox did want to do it. And then we got back that she couldn't do it because she was on Friends. And we shot that movie from December until the beginning of April, end of March. And she was unavailable during that thing. And so I heard that, and I was like, okay. And then we moved on.
Yeah.
And we got Cameron Diaz, and that's what happened. So I went over to her. I said, hey, Courtney, wait a second. Hold on. This is coming back to me. I said, no, you passed on us. And she said, no, I didn't. I said, yes, you did, because we wanted you, and then they said you were unavailable. Well, what happens a lot of times in these things, as I've learned since, is...
You can do both?
No, they didn't. Like, her people didn't tell her, like, hey, you know, we're going to pass on your behalf. They just said, you didn't get it, you know, like, because she would have flipped out and tried to get away to, you know, find a way to get out of whatever. They didn't tell her.
Yeah.
So in her mind, I screwed her over, which, and I don't blame her for being angry, and she was angry. But that happens all the time. Like, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, how come you never invited, you know, offered me anything in your movies? I said, well, we offered you the lead in, you know, in Something About Mary. And he's, what? I said, yeah, we offered you the lead in that, and you passed. And they're like, when? I said, you get it. They never got it. It goes through their agents.
Right.
And their agents, and particularly the one that was the most passed on of all our movies, of course, was Dumb and Dumber. And it was because of the title. Now, of course, it's a great title. But back then, people, literally, agents would say, I'm not going to give this to my client. They'll fire me. Dumb and Dumber? You think they want to be in a thing called Dumb and Dumber? No, they don't. It was like, all right, that's why we changed the title twice. Once we called it Go West. We just thought, okay, not as offensive. And then another one, we gave it, that got nowhere, so then we gave it kind of a hip title, A Power Tool Is Not a Toy. And that was from an album by the Young Adults, a Rhode Island band, and it just, I like the stupidity aspect. A power tool is not a toy. And we call it that, all of a sudden everybody started reading it.
Really?
Yeah. When we called it that, everybody started reading it. But still, many actors, everybody passed on that. Hundreds of people. Before we got Jim Carrey, and then a few people wanted in. A lot of people wanted in.
Sure.
But before that, you know, so many actors have come up, and I said, we offered you Dumb and Dumber. Like,
well, how did the Carrey thing work then? Because it's important to factor in how many read and said, go fuck yourself, or how many agents said, I'm not going to let him read it. And then I have to assume, given the timeline, Jim had already struck gold.
Dumb and Dumber was the third of his 1, 2, 3, 94 punch.
Well, yeah, but Jim attached himself to Dumb and Dumber before Ace Ventura came out.
Oh, right, yeah. 'Cause that came out early 94.
We couldn't get anybody. I'm going to give you a nutshell thing of how it happened really quickly. So My agent, Richard Lovett, I've been with him my entire career. He one day gave me the best advice I've ever gotten in this biz. And this was after like 3 years of trying to get Dumb and Dumber made. He said, okay, Pete, you're making a mistake. You gotta change your rap. So what? He says, you're going to people and you're saying, hey, we're trying to make this movie. Do you want to be in? Yeah. He says, from now on, you go to them and you say, we're making this movie. Do you want in? They perk up. You're making it? Because then they don't want to miss it if you're making it. Right. If you're trying to make it and they think, oh, you need me to make it? Fine, I don't want to be in a thing that you need me to make.
Right.
You know, they want to be something that's already on the track going away. So I said, well, but that's not really true. I can't make it if I don't get them. He says,
you were holding on to truth in show business?
He said, well, how much money you got in your bank account? I said, I don't know, $7,000. He goes, you could make it for $7,000. It's been done. Yeah. Just go out and shoot this stupid thing. Just do it for $7,000 in your brain. Just get that over. You're making it for $7,000. I'm like, all right. So I go to people. I'd say, hey, do you want to be in? We're making this movie. You want to be in? Now they're thinking, well, we don't want to miss the boat. So they started reading it, and people started looking at it. And we went to these guys in Washington, D.C. called the Pettis Brothers. The Pettis Brothers are real estate guys, but they had bankrolled the Coen Brothers' first couple movies.
Wow.
So we went to them. Somebody told us about them. We went to them, and their guy was the guy in their office was a guy named George Pelecanos, who now is a famous novelist. George Pelecanos has written. He writes hard-boiled fiction. He's incredible, and he also was behind The Wire and a bunch of other stuff. He's a genius. Well, he was just working in their office then, reading stuff for them. This is 20 years ago.
Holy crap!
And he read it, and he said, "This is hilarious, man. I think it's really good. You know, we'll give you $100,000." I said, "Awesome, $100,000. You know, we got a movie."
Yeah.
So now we're going forward with $100,000, and then we sent it to Jim Carrey. And Jim Carrey, we sent to everybody. I didn't know who Jim Carrey was. He was the white guy in Living Color. I didn't know that. They said, this guy wants to be in it. Who? Jim Carrey. Who's that? White guy in Living Color. I said, great. I would have done it with anyone, you know, honestly. At that point, like, we had the guy who was doing the Burger King commercials at the time had already passed. Literally. My brother came in, he said, we just hit rock bottom. I said, what? He said, the Burger King guy passed.
Steve Wilson. You're talking about Steve Wilson.
No. The guy, no, this guy was like, he actually broke out. He got like an MTV show from this Burger King commercial.
Oh, man.
But in any case, he passed. And so they said, Jim Carrey, great. So once we had Jim Carrey, then New Line said, okay, you got Jim Carrey, we'll do it for $1 million. We'll do it for $1 million. We're like, wow, this is a real movie now. You got $1 million. And then they said, he's got a movie coming out, by the way, called Ace Ventura. You want to see a screening? Sure. I went to it. I was like, this is fucking huge. This is hilarious. I couldn't believe how funny it was. Saw it with a bunch of kids. They were crying, laughing. So when the movie came out...
Did you realize you struck gold?
Oh, struck gold. Yeah. And then when the movie came out, it was #1. And the studio offered him $250,000 to do Dumb and Dumber, and he said, "No, we want $350,000." They said, "No, $250." The next weekend, it was #1 again. They said, "Okay, you got $350." They said, "No, we want $500." They said, "Nope, no, you're not getting $500." Next weekend, it was #1 again. $500, $750. He ended up getting $7 million.
Because they dragged their fuck.
$7 million. It was the first comedy actor ever to get $7 million.
As he ended up becoming the first comedy actor to make $20 million.
And the budget turned into $16 million.
From 100,000.
So 7 of 16 went directly into Jim's pocket?
Yeah, and then they didn't want Jeff Daniels. The studio's like, no, he's not a comic guy. You can't have him. Like, what do you mean? He's not writing it.
Had you screen tested him, or they're just hearing the name?
No, the name. I wanted him because when I saw this movie, Something Wild, I just found that's one of my all-time favorite movies. In fact, I've seen that movie more than any movie ever. I've probably seen that movie 25 times. I see it periodically just to give me that feeling of, God, yeah, that's what film could be like. Right. The colors, the feeling, the music, the story, the whole thing. I love that thing. But they didn't want him, and so Jim wanted him. Jim wanted him badly, and Jim said, "No, I want this guy." So they said, "All right, we'll make him an offer." I think they offered him $50,000, and they figured he'd just say, "Fuck you, I'm not doing 50. He's getting 7. I'm doing $50,000, but he said, "Yeah, okay, I'll take it." Took it because he wanted to do the thing, and he ended up making a lot. After the thing made a lot of money, but that's how that happened.
That's truly extraordinary. I was trying to think of a single not great, forget bad, single not great performance Jeff Daniels has ever given. He's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He's like my other favorite, Jeff Bridges. In fact, Jamie, you have a game, don't you? Bridges, Daniels,
Paxton, Pullman, Bridges, Daniels.
Yeah, yeah,
You just
yeah.
name a movie with one of the four.
But they're all great.
They are.
They are all great.
They are all great.
Jeff Bridges is my all-time favorite actor, comedy, drama, anything.
Yeah.
He's just flawless crazy.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about it earlier, and Daniels is in that same fucking world.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. He's the most, I would say Jeff Daniels is the most underrated actor in the country.
Yeah.
There's nobody, he's never not fantastic.
Exactly.
And even like Dumb and Dumber, okay, he got the better role in Dumb and Dumber, by the way. There's two guys, Harry and Lloyd. And I always thought, when we got Jim Carrey, I assumed he was playing Harry.
Right.
Harry gets some of the better stuff to do. And I remember Jim saying, no, I'm Lloyd. I said, and I actually told him, I said, really? I said, I think Harry's a better role. He said, I know. That's why I'm playing Lloyd. That was the confidence Jim had. He wanted somebody to have something to dig into, and he'd take the next role up, and he did. As written, Lloyd was way less than Harry, but it only evens out because of Jim's performance. But that, Jeff is, his reactions to everything is what makes it all
completely
work.
Yeah. It's the Tom Cruise, in my opinion, in Rain Man.
Yeah.
It's his character that is the reason that movie works.
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman gets an Academy Award for playing one lick the entire film. And it's the journey of the other guy that you're either going on the ride or you're not. Yes,
So,
Sandy.
Lloyd Christmas and Mary Swanson.
Yes.
Is there a deleted joke in there about Merry Christmas that didn't make the...
Yeah, there was one in there. He says, Merry Christmas. He says, it kind of has a ring, doesn't it?
I remember watching that movie and
Is that not in there
this
now?
joke better pay off.
Is that not in there?
No.
Maybe we cut it. Yeah, it was in there. Merry Christmas. Kind of has a ring, doesn't
Well, that
it?
was one of my questions. When you have a film like that is a joke fest, either on the page or in the performance, when you get to editing, how is it not a 4-hour movie?
The first screening we ever did was 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Oh, well,
that's the guy's honest truth.
A question, well...
We showed it to 50 of our friends.
Friends and family.
It's our first movie. We didn't know any better. So we just
You didn't know a comedy should be 2 hours or less?
No.
Specifically 94 minutes?
No. Honestly, we thought, like, I watched 3 hours and 40 minutes. I thought it was a masterpiece. I didn't know.
Magnum opus.
Everything worked.
Did you not have an editor? Because this is your first time at the plate.
No.
Did you not have an editor who said, fellas, you don't want to do this?
No, he didn't say that, but he should have. But
or he wanted you to find on your own.
We didn't do a test screening. We just got together 50 of our best friends, and we said, hey, tell us what's good and what's not good. Well, 3 hours and 40 minutes is twice as long as it turned out to be. It turned out to be 1 hour 48, so it's double the length. And when it ended, we were standing at the door, my brother and I, and the first friend came out, Timmy Sheehan. He walked out, and my brother said, what'd you think? He said, the truth? He says, yeah. He goes, worst movie I've ever seen in my life. He goes, seriously? He says, I am serious. And it's like, Bob was like, fuck you, get the fuck out of here. And the next guy came, what do you think? It's like, that was the first reaction we got to it. And then we went back and we cut and cut and cut. I think the next screening we did, we had it at 2 hours and 2 minutes.
The very next one?
The very next one. We did 2 hours and 2 minutes.
You were able to cut 1 hour 38?
Yes. It was, people...
You got a film out of a film.
People were just saying, you're fucking assholes to do that to us. It's like, well, guys, we wanted you to see the thing. Well, you shouldn't have. They were angry.
Well, looking back on your organic inability to kill babies, as the term goes, do you marvel at the innocence and the naivete? Whether all those jokes were worth testing or not, it's still 3 hours and 40 minutes. You and your brother had been to movies.
Not a lot.
I mean, your first time directing, so how about communicating to actors? Forget all the technical side. I assume you've got a DP that says, kid, I got this.
The technical shit was where we were terrible, and probably still are.
By the way, many directors have proven an inability and, in fact, a release of that area of expertise to say, go do, I'm going to...
I knew this. I didn't know anything about cameras, didn't know about lenses, didn't know about angles, didn't know about coverage, didn't know anything. I remember the week before I was doing the movie, I sat next to a director, and I'm blanking on his name right now.
Martin Scorsese.
Yes. And this guy had done 8, 9 movies, right. And I said to him, we were at like a dinner party, and I sat next to him, and I said, I'm doing a movie. He goes, oh yeah? I said, yeah, next week. He goes, oh. I said, any tips, any advice? He says, just make sure you get tons of coverage. Just get lots of coverage.
And you said to me, I guess. What do you mean?
Yeah. I said, what's coverage? He goes, what? I said, what's coverage? He goes, you're kidding, right? I said, no. And he actually called his wife over, who was at another table. He goes, honey, come here for a second. And she came over and said, tell her what you just said to me. I said,
I'm directing a movie next week, and I don't know what he means.
I don't know what coverage is. She goes, you do. I said, no, what is that? What is coverage? She goes, all the different angles. I said, oh, yeah, well, I know that. I mean, I know to get that, but I didn't know it was called coverage. I had read enough books in the last month to, like, get this, get on that angle.
Yeah, what books did you read? Did you read the Lumet, the...
John Singleton gave us, he was kind enough to let us, he was making a movie at the time. He let us come on the set for the day. And we just kind of followed him around, and then he gave me 2 books, and I can't remember what they're called right
Higher
now.
Learning?
Pardon me?
Higher Learning?
What was he shooting, Singleton?
Yeah, he was shooting Higher Learning. That's very good.
He knows his years.
Jesus. That's excellent.
Oh, it's party tricks.
I think we got there for a lesbian scene that was kind
of... with Tyra Banks, or not Tyra Banks, the other one, Christy Swanson and...
the other one.
The other one.
We were there that
she wasn't.
day. So we didn't pick up much about the cameras.
And then
the camera? Oh, yeah. No, but basically, I called David Zucker the night before. I had a massive panic attack the night before we were doing the movie.
Good timing.
Yeah. Because...
Good timing to realize you didn't know shit from Shinola.
I knew we didn't know shit from Shinola the whole time, but I didn't think... When Jim Carrey came in the room and said, I want to do this movie, he said, who's going to... When we were sitting there with the studio, he said, so who's directing? I said, I am. He goes, okay. So nobody questioned it. And we were like, okay. I was expecting, like, why you? Huh? What have you done? Can I see... You do commercials? You do video? What do you got? Music video? You get something, right? You know, nothing. Hadn't gone to film school... Hadn't been, done nothing. So we just kept waiting for someone to say, hey guys, where's your reel or something. Nobody ever questioned it. And the night before, I was with my brother, and I just had massive panic attack. Like literally, first of all, we had flown up to Breckenridge, Colorado. It's 9,600 feet. So I was having trouble breathing.
That was natural.
Yeah, the
biological.
altitude. And then I started thinking, I think I'm having a heart attack. I couldn't catch my breath.
Right.
And then I was like curled up in a ball on the thing. I was like, Bobby, this is fucked up, man. We don't know what we're doing. How the hell are we going to do this? He goes, we're going to do it. I said, how? He goes, we'll do it. So I called David Zucker actually that night, and I said, David, I'm in a jam. I'm supposed to be directing a movie tomorrow, and I don't know anything about cameras, lenses. I don't know the white things, what they're called, the boards. Who tells everybody what to do, And he said, no, it doesn't matter. You wrote the script, right? I said, yeah. He said, you know the performances you want? I said, yeah. He says, concentrate on that. Tell your first AD and your DP you don't know shit. Don't lie to them because they'll let you hang. They'll bury you. If they think you're a hot shit and just tell them, look, guys, I don't know anything. And I did. I pulled them in a room. I said, guys, we don't know anything about the technical aspects of making a movie, and we need you guys probably more than you've ever been needed on any movie. We really do. Like honestly, I don't know when to say action. I don't know at what point I say action. You, the first AD, have to point to me and say, now's your time, and say action. I'd look around and say, oh, action, It was that bad. But we had written the script, we knew the performances we wanted, and that's what we focused on.
Yeah. And that's all you needed at that point.
Yeah, it was. It was like, we knew the story we wanted to tell. And occasionally, my first AD is a guy named J.B. Rogers, who's spectacular. He would just come over and say, hey, we got to get a few more angles there. I said, really? He said, yeah, you only got like a this and an over and this. He goes, I didn't understand why it would be hard to cut, because I'd never cut anything. And he said, you got to get a clean single in case, like, her arm's up here when you're talking, and you have to go around the other side, her arm's down here, you know, little things like that.
Continuity and all those things.
All that stuff.
You didn't know anything about cutting until one of your very dear friends said, it's the worst film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's when you started learning about cutting.
We're going to start cutting this baby down.
Did J.P. Rogers go on to do some of the American Pie movies?
Yes, he did. He did American Pie 2.
2, yeah.
Yeah. Which did great, 150-something million. He's a stud.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, those kind of numbers, when they start to trickle in, you know, some big numbers have come across. There's something about Mary, certainly.
And some not so big. You know, those are the ones, like, it's...
Well, let me ask you specifically about that.
Yeah.
So Dumb and Dumber, surprises, delights, changes lives, the inevitable question, now what? That great moment at the end of The Candidate, the Robert Redford film. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Yeah. Sitting on the edge of the small hotel room bed. And now what?
Yeah, it's also the end of The Graduate. You know, they're sitting there in the back of the bus just kind of looking at each other like, they don't say it, but...
Now what?
What the fuck are we going to do?
Yeah. I imagine offers and things are coming your way based on the success alone.
Not as many as you'd think.
But people want to be in.
Yeah, but Dumb and Dumber was perceived as a Jim Carrey movie, and we weren't getting bombarded with offers. You know, it's a funny. We've had a funny career. Like we've never had a huge opening ever. Like we've never had that. I've never popped champagne.
Really?
No.
Something About Mary didn't open gigantic?
No, it opened at 13.
That was a slow burn.
It went up to do over 350 million worldwide and opened at 13.
Right. But we gotta, you know, God makes us sweat. Everyone's a nail biter. Everyone's a nail biter. Even Dumb and Dumber opened at like 16.9. So you're thinking, okay, that's good, but it could fall off to 8 next week and it'd be just so-so. So it basically, like on Something About Mary, honestly, I was playing golf one day. It had been out for 8 weeks, and I was walking down the fairway, and I just thought, it's a hit. You know, that's like what we get.
8 weeks in.
We don't get this, like, you know, Iron Man stuff where people are like, you know, champagne. You know, I've never had that. Like,
well, you have, but not related to a film.
Yes, but Kingpin.
So here's marketing.
Yes.
My question was, when it comes to the frustrations and the disappointment of marketing, you know you've got, and I'm sure looking back you have to feel, and based on a lot of feedback that you must continue to get to this very day, have something extraordinary on your hands in terms of storytelling and funny and performances, and that film will, I think, outlive maybe some of the other big hits that you've had.
Yeah.
Just in terms of its fan base.
Yeah.
That tend to be a little more religious about their claim. How about that feeling?
Right.
People lay claim to something you've done. Oh, you did that movie? I own that. Well, actually, the studio. You have a copy.
Yeah, exactly.
So the marketing on Kingpin, it comes out during the Olympics, I think, right?
Came out during the Olympics in '98, and they did no advertising on the Olympics, none. And we said, what's going on? There's no ads on the Olympics. What's happening? Came out after the first week of the Olympics. They said, that's not your audience.
You mean the world?
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, really? I thought the world's not our audience? He said, no, that's not your audience.
No one in the world.
We're going to do it on bowling channels. I said, no.
Oh, no. Seriously?
Yeah, that's the truth. And they never did any ad. Now, the week before it opened, that was only our second movie. Our first one had done great, Dumb and Dumber. And Kingpin, I loved. I thought it was as good as Dumb and Dumber. I personally enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic, and it played well and had the same kind of laugh. So you just assume it's going to do, like, that life goes like that. Everything, if you do a good movie, it does great. And the week before, they were telling us it's going to do 18 opening weekend. I said, okay, that's good. That's good. And then they called me a couple days later and said, it looks like 14. He said, oh, that's okay. And then they called me a couple days later and said, I think 9.
Oh, God.
And then they called us the last day. They said, you pray for 5. Pray to get 5 this weekend. And it did $5 million the opening weekend. and we were devastated. You know, just oh my God, like more devastated. I always preface it by saying this. You know, it's not heart surgery on an infant. You know, I mean, sometimes I think, why are you so? Your movie didn't do well. Calm down. But you know, as a creative thing, like it does break your heart when you put so much, you know, energy and love into a project and you expect something and you don't get it. But in any case, did $5 million, and the next morning I got a phone call from the producer, the studio actually, and he said. I said, well, you know, are you surprised you didn't put any ads on the Olympics? I mean, what did you think it would do? He said, Peter, the movie didn't work.
Oh, God.
Look inside you.
No.
Look at yourself. You're to blame. I said, okay, thank you.
Wow.
That was the talk I got.
Wow.
And I had a 6-month, like, oh my God, my career's done. I am done. I'm finished. I must be an idiot, like, because, you know, it didn't do well, and the reviews weren't great, by the way, except for Siskel and Ebert gave it the all-time best review of all time. They literally did this, and this was the only thing that got me through those next 6 months.
I would think so.
They did this. They said they started talking about the movie. They didn't like. By the way, Siskel liked Dumb and Dumber, but Ebert didn't. And until it came out on DVD, and then he said, "This is really good. I didn't like it, but now I do." Anyway. They were talking about it. They said, this was a joy to watch this movie. And they actually turned to the camera. They say, okay, we're talking to you, the filmmakers. We want to thank you for making that movie because you have no idea how many times we sit in a room and we just suffer through it. And this was just joyful for us. It was just a pleasure to watch. And looking into the camera.
That sounds like Siskel, by the way.
Yeah. Well, Siskel did do it. But he looked right into the camera, and it was on Sunday morning after I was like, just shaken.
Yeah.
And anyway, 6 months, it was like, you know, geez, what are we going to do next? And then it came out on DVD or video, and it did great. It was #1 4 weeks in a row on video, and it became kind of a cult thing. But this is what I was getting into. Is this is how it goes for us. So I get a phone call out of the blue from David Geffen. And I don't know David Geffen. He calls me up, and David Geffen's like, hey, what's up, man? He goes, hey, I got to tell you something. I had a screening. This is before I think it was out on DVD. He said, we have a movie night at my house, and somebody brought Kingpin. And I was like, no, what? No, don't play that. And he said, no, I want to play this movie. He says, we howled. We just howled. It was hilarious. I never had so much fun. I said, and yet, if you had pitched me that movie, I never would have done it, ever. I would have said, no way, I'm not doing that movie. So whatever you want to do next, done.
Jesus.
Yes.
Jesus.
So then we came up a few months later. We came across the script, Something About Mary, by Ed Decter and John Strauss, which we wanted to rewrite. We thought it had a lot of hope.
I forgot that Ed Decter was in that too.
Yeah, he wrote it.
Yeah.
And I called David Geffen. I said, we got the thing, and I sent over the script. He passed.
Whatever you want to do. Blank check. Just tell me what you need.
Yeah. So that's how it's been, pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's pretty much been that way the whole time. Like, you never, you know, you think you're going to, like, one day I just want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and perspective, though, is kind of a healthy, wonderful thing. I remember I set up a screening for us, mentioned Jamie's family's in town, to go see the Beverly Hills Cop pilot on Friday at 3 o'clock. When I set the date, I thought, it'll probably be decided by then one way or the other. I just want to see it. So as we were walking to see it, and at that point at 3 o'clock on Friday, again, for perspective of the timing, we were a lock. There was no stopping us. So as we're walking to go see the pilot, I passed by a couple of guys who were stacking chairs after lunch because we walked through the commissary. And I passed by them and I actually said, look, there's the type of work that they're happy to have, and you should be thrilled because you would not enjoy doing that job, stacking those chairs right there.
Yeah.
That sort of perspective has never left me in any hills and valleys, ups and downs, ebbs and flows.
Right.
This overwhelming sort of, I mean,
By the way, that was another thing I want to talk about when you were talking in the beginning, is like, I can't believe that didn't get picked up. Like, that is like...
And you probably didn't even know about the $10 million kill thing.
No, but I am like sick hearing about that for you, because not in a million years are you going to expect that to happen. And by the way, Nikki Fink, I love Nikki Fink, by the way. I don't want to pick a fight with Nikki Fink.
No, you don't.
No, I think Nikki Fink's fantastic, and she's really good at what she does.
It's extraordinary the spies she has.
She's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the day the Three Stooges opened, last April, a year ago April, it wasn't tracking great. And then it opened, and she blew out a story that afternoon at like 4 in the afternoon. Stooges surges, #1, passes whatever #2 was. And I was in New York City, right? And I was doing press or something there, and I ran into some friends, and they were all like, "Look at what's going on! Your movie's exploding!" Right? So we went out, we're pounding them, the whole thing. I get my champagne.
You finally have the moment.
7:30. They come back. No, we got it wrong. We got it wrong. It was just the early shows because of the kids, and then it dipped off again. So it fell back to where they thought it was going to be. But anyway. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking because you said it even tested well?
Through the roof, quote unquote. Quote unquote.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's a political thing that will come out eventually that there's no reason for me to get into the details of on camera, but I will be happy to speak at length to it. The reason that it crossed my mind was the perspective and how it seems to...
Let me tell you my perspective.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I am. I
have that on the next page.
No, I am. I'm like, you know, I look at my life like I can't believe how well it's turned out. Like, you know, honestly, like I have great kids, I have a great wife, I have a great life. I have a very nice life. My parents are still alive. They're in their 80s. You know, it's just I've got a really good thing going. And every day I get up, the first thing I do is like, thank you, God. I'm so grateful. And I've never been on a movie set, and this is the truth, for 1 minute that I wasn't like pinching myself. I can't believe I'm making a movie. Like I never get sick of it. I never took it for granted. I never felt like, you know, yeah, of course, that's me. I deserve this. Right. I don't feel that way. I never have.
Right.
I'm completely grateful, but like, okay, I produced a movie called Movie 43, which came out in January. And this is a movie, a bunch of shorts, and it's got 15 shorts by 12 different directors, all different writers, all different actors. And it was an experiment by Charlie Wessler.
Kentucky Fried Movie company.
Yeah, Kentucky Fried Movie, only, like I said, all different directors, whereas the Zuckers did Kentucky Fried Movie, and they did them all. And
right.
This is all different guys.
12 different tones.
All different tones.
And it was shot over the course of years.
4
right?
years.
Yeah.
Because they did it for nothing. It cost $6 million. And when they were like, I shot one with Stephen Merchant and Halle Berry, and I shot another one with Kate Winslet and Hugh Jackman. And Charlie knows everybody. And he would call people and say, hey, do you want to be in this thing? They say, I would, but I'm not available for 2 years. And he'd say, well, wait. Really? Yeah, well, wait. When do you get the next break? A year from July? Okay. And where are you going to be? We're going to be in Bristol, England. Like, okay, we'll go there. And that's how he did it. So he would break down the crews, and that's the only way he could do it. But anyway, I shot 2 of them. I worked on those 2 for 5 days. I loved it. I had a ball. But Charlie was having a hard time setting up, so he said, Pete, can you put your name on as a producer? It'll help me get it made. I said, absolutely. Charlie's been my good friend. He helped me get Dumb and Dumber made, and he's been producing all our movies. So I did it. The movie comes out, and it gets the worst reviews of all time. Of all time. It was on the front page of the New York Post. It said, the worst movie I've ever seen. That was on the front page on a Saturday. It was like... By the way, you'd love this movie. But
I did love the movie.
It's a weird thing. There was an attack, and that was unprecedented in my career. But when I have been attacked, like when we've gotten bad reviews, because we've never been the sweet, the darlings. But when I get bad reviews, I'm like, well, fuck them. I wrote it, I directed it, I edited it. I'm fine with it. I just disagree. But this was more difficult because I hardly worked on the thing.
Right.
It's like, and I'm getting like, and everything started with Movie 43, spearheaded by Peter Farrelly, is a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. And I went to like wow, I was hardly aware of the movie because it takes so long. And all of a sudden I was getting like the front page of Yahoo, Farrelly movie sucks, they're done, they suck, fuck them. And I remember like, like all of a sudden you're like the lead story in the world, and it's in a negative way.
For 9 seconds.
For a week.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was like no news week. It was just suddenly, that was the lead thing. And
that's a good show, by the way. We should pitch that, the No News Week.
Yeah. Nothing came up, although, like, we're on the front page of the New York Post, but on page 3 is like, a triple murder. I'm like, really? Ours, you had to put us on the front? You don't think? Oh, anyway. But during that time, I recognized something, and this is the great thing. This is what makes me happy. Is like, for that month, it was just painful. It was a painful month, and I suddenly realized my wife is so much nicer to me when I'm getting my ass kicked. Like, she is the type of woman who is there when you're down. And I realized, like, God damn, I got a good wife. Like, she was like, not like, she was like, just babied me through it. Just kind of took me and like, come on, let's go do this, let's go do that, and my kids too. And I realized, like, I got nothing, no problems. Like, if that's my problem, that you're gonna get, the New York Post is gonna,
right.
whatever. Like, I don't have a problem.
Right.
And
if you read these things, yeah, that's the only problem.
I never read any of them.
Right.
I never read any of them. But you can't miss it when it's like cover
everywhere. Yeah, I liked some of the responses I read. You wrote a couple in Twitter, which was just basically, guys, it's going to be okay. Yeah, we're all going to get through this. Yeah, was the crux.
Yeah, it's like it was an experimental film. What's the big? I don't know what's going on. What's happening?
You ask us to bring you something different, and we do, and then you hate us.
No, it was just it was an odd reaction. It was so.
Why so violent?
Yeah,
yeah.
I've never been
How dare you?
I've never been pounded like that hard, and it was odd.
Yeah,
it was an odd thing to take. But again, the thing that came out of it was like, I just recognize what I have. I'm so lucky, to have the people around me that I have. It made me feel better somehow.
Yeah. I love this. A prop guy comes to you. He's prepared a bunch of different sizes and textures.
Yeah.
Of the drip from Stiller's ear.
There was a guy.
Opened up a briefcase.
Yeah.
Splooge number 1.
Yeah. The day we're shooting the thing on Ben Stiller's ear, you have guys that, a movie is 150 people doing all different things. Everybody has to do their job, and it all comes together, and it's an amazing thing, actually. And whenever I have people on the set, and I always do, I always have friends from home, and people. I love bringing people who have never been on a movie set on the set, because they're like, oh my God, this is awesome, and that energy spills makes me happy. You know, I love the feel. But
because you can't get it back.
No,
you had that first time too.
Yeah, and so one day we were about to shoot the thing. I said, "So what's up? What do we have for this?" And the prop guy says, "Yeah, this guy." And this other guy comes in. It's like Men in Black. He's got like a suit on. Comes walking over. He's got a briefcase. He opens it up, and in that briefcase is probably 40 different loads, and they're all hanging on a hook, like earrings. And he's got it. He opens it up and it's sideways, and they're all hanging there. And some are long and transparent, and some are thick and short, and some are lumpy, and some are this, some are that. And we just pulled him in, Ben, and we held him up. It's too little. You want to know that? It's too long. That looks like earrings. This like. And finally, we got the right one.
By the way, this wasn't from sense memory. Neither of you had actually seen semen hang from an earlobe.
No.
Okay.
I never have.
So, but you're holding it up like this doesn't look right.
Yeah, you're trying to look at the one that's the most identifiable.
Right.
But not
believable.
Yeah.
By the way, that's the thing. When you're doing something that silly, whether it is Dumb or Dumber or Something About Mary, whether it's Matt Dillon's teeth, whatever it is. Don't you feel there has to be a foundation of reality?
We do.
Yeah.
We believe that. Like, we don't go as broad as some people. We're broad. But we don't, I always believe that there has to be a little reality. That's our way of doing it. Not everybody does that, and it works for other people going broad, but this is the way we do it. There was a famous scene. At the beginning of Dumb and Dumber, there's that one scene where Jim and Jeff are, Jim's trying to talk Jeff into going to Aspen. And Jeff's like, no, I'm not going. And then Jim looks out the window and he goes, come on, man. He goes, I don't have anybody. I don't have anything. And then he plays it real. And he actually got worked up. Like, he teared up in that scene. Like that. And when we screened it, the studio said, "That's got to go. What are you kidding me? This is a comedy." And he said, "No. He's got to do that." And they said, "Why? That's bullshit. People are going to hate that." I said, "No, they're not going to hate it." I said, "In 2 minutes, he's selling a dead bird to a blind kid in a wheelchair. You better love him. You better love the guy." And love is when you feel their pain a little.
Yeah.
You learn to, the show, you've seen Eastbound and Down?
Sure.
Okay, well, Eastbound and Down, the first year I thought was really the best year. It was a great year, but they've had several good years. But the first episode, I watched that pilot episode and I was thinking, how's this going to work? He's just an asshole, racist, homophobe, sexist, this, that. He's just an asshole. And there's one scene where he lies in bed, like toward the end of the show, he's lying there and he's just pissed off and he's there and he's lying in bed and all of a sudden he goes,
yeah.
breaks into tears. And you realize, okay, this is a guy in pain. I'm going to go with him.
Right.
I'm going to go with him. That's how we feel. Like there's got to be a bit of reality. Or, look, the Zuckers we're not in the business if not for the Zuckers. Because the Zuckers that was the first time I actually thought, maybe we could do this. I remember seeing Airplane and seeing the Zuckers interviewed on Letterman and thinking, they don't seem that different than us. Maybe we could do this. And
their brothers.
And their brothers. And but the one thing that I wanted to improve on was that they were so broad that at the end it was joke after joke after joke after joke. And by the end, you didn't really care. You didn't really think that plane was going to crash. Right. If I'm doing that movie, I want you to think the plane's going to crash and people will die and you're going to give a shit. But that's a different tone. My tone's different than theirs. But sure. I always felt at the end of their movies, I was just like, okay, let's get through it. Let's finish it. I wanted it to be, at the end, you gave a shit what was happening. As broad as we were, at the end, you still care, and you want to see how it's going to play out.
So when you're hanging the sample semen from Ben's ear, you got to know in the back of your mind, this thought has crossed a very high percentage of men before a date. It's based in enough of a foundation of reality that it's relatable, so that the hijinks that come from this concern and the comedy as over the top as it might get, at least started in a place of genuine concern for the male species.
Well, I don't know about that specific scene, honestly, but the setup for him in the beginning, a guy who can't get a break, can't get a date, and get shot down, like we took 20 minutes in the beginning of the movie to make you like him.
Right.
I mean, to the point where he's standing up for the intellectually challenged guy, and you're just like, okay, well, he deserves it. The most important scene in that movie, actually, I think, is that when he does try to track her down, and Matt Dillon comes back and says, I found her, she's an elephant, and she's got 5 kids, and she's on welfare, and she's been married 6 times, and she's a mess. He says, yeah, well, I still want to find her. He goes, what? He goes, yeah, I can't just like turn it off like that. I still care. And that's where women are like, okay, well, he deserves it. Because he's not chasing Cameron Diaz.
Right.
He's chasing Cameron Diaz in trouble, a piece of shit Cameron Diaz. And then he deserves her. But anyway, back to that thing. Yeah, that started from a very Seinfeldian thought, which was, and we almost were going to, call those guys, which was, I asked my brother, I said, hey, Bob, is there something here where if you're masturbating and you lose it, like what would happen? Could we do something with that? Should we call Seinfeld? That sounds like something they do. You're masturbating and you close your eyes and then you're,
where is it?
Hey, where'd it go? And that's all I had. And then my brother said, no, we're using that. We're keeping it because where'd it go? And I said, I don't know. It doesn't matter. He goes, no, it matters. It matters where it went. I was like, okay. He goes, suppose it landed on his ear and he didn't know. And then we're laughing. We're thinking, oh, that's great. So he's walking around town with it on his ear. And then we thought, no, wait a second. So if it's on his ear, what if he has like a hot date? And then he doesn't know. And then all of a sudden we're like, wait a second, this is perfect for Mary, because we were writing Mary at the time. We said, when he finally hooks up with her, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it happens. And then, 20 minutes later, he's like, wait a second, what would he think it is? If she says, what is that? What would she think it is? And we said, hair gel? And they're like, yeah, he'd say it's hair gel. And then wait a second, she might put it in her hair, blah, blah, blah. Goes all the way through.
Pretty spectacular when it comes to the magic. Jamie, were there any interesting ones? I want to give you an opportunity. Forgive me for busting in on your
I was not whacking snakes.
professional opportunity.
I promise you I was not whacking snakes on my
There's
phone.
a Simpsons game, in case there's anyone out there wondering what the fuck she's talking about when she says, I was not whacking snakes.
I wasn't.
Since I didn't have a chance to set up on the computer, would you like to offer up a T5 or a?
Well,
anyone worth a damn?
Our buddy Travis Rink had a couple questions.
Were they questions or T5?
Questions.
Okay, so we offer the audience an opportunity,
Sure.
And usually I have it, not usually, but every time except now. So what do you got, Travis Rink?
Well, he pretty much answered the first one. It was about it was a question about how he got involved in Kingpin, but he wants to know: are you a fan of Don Knotts movies like Attaboy Abner?
Yeah. Don Knotts is, well, you know, people ask us, well, what was your biggest influence film-wise growing up? Well, we didn't see a lot of movies, actually. Our town didn't have a movie theater except for a short period when I was in high school.
Right.
So we went to about 1 or 2 movies a year.
Really?
We go to Providence for, like, Sound of Music, you know, Mary Poppins,
Sure.
you know, whatever. The great, you know, whatever. Not much. But we had TV.
How's your water?
Great.
Sure.
And we had TV, and the most influential show was for us was Andy Griffith.
Yeah.
And it was because every episode you would laugh. I'm talking about the Barney years.
Sure.
I think that's 60 to 65 or 66.
Sammy?
My specialty's in movies, sir.
Gotcha.
And it was the Barney years, the black and white years. And every show you would laugh, but you also felt something, a little. You didn't necessarily get emotional, but sometimes you actually did. And that's what we tried to do when we got into it. But Don Knotts, for about 10 years in a row, I watched The Ghost of Mr. Chicken every Halloween night.
Did you?
I would have people over, and I had a DVD, or what do you call it, VHS.
VHS, sure.
I had taped it when it was on TV once, so it was a really scratchy, screwy thing. But that is just a little masterpiece. And everything he did, you know, he won the Emmy 5 years in a row.
I did not know that.
5 years in a row, won the Emmy, best supporting actor. He's a genius. I've been to his grave a few times. You know, he's buried right by Marilyn Monroe. And if I'm in the area, I'll just go over and I just love the guy. And, you know, I'm kind of kicking myself that I never met him and I never met Andy Griffith, because I could have.
Sure.
You know, there were a couple times where, like, I could have just called him and said, hey, guys, I just want to let you know how much you meant to me.
Right.
But I never did.
Yeah.
Have you met Ron Howard? That's something.
I never met him in person, I don't think. I talked to him on the phone
Okay.
once.
You met him online.
Yeah.
I got the whole crew on the set of Willow to whistle the theme to Andy and Mayberry as he walked on the set. That was fun.
Really?
Yeah.
It is a masterpiece. In fact, when we just wrote Dumb and Dumber 2, by the way.
Right. T.O.
T.O.
Which I love.
And it took 2 years, because we didn't want to do it unless it was as good as the first one. We didn't do Dumb and Dumber, I want to point out. You know,
Right.
that was the studio.
People should know that. Yeah.
That was a prequel that they came to us. They said, "You want to do this prequel, Dumb and Dumber?" No, that's all kids are dumb. The point is they're in their 40s and they're dumb. That's the joke. But anyway, we wanted to do Dumb and Dumber 2, but we wanted to get it right, and so we really took our time. We've written scripts in 6, 8, 10 weeks. We took 2 years. Like, we'd put it down for 3 months, come back to it. Put it down for 3 months, come back to it. But almost every day before we started writing, we would watch an Andy Griffith episode, black and white.
Seriously?
Yeah. And the reason we did it is it reminds you of the simplicity of comedy. It's very simple. It's so simple. You watch those things and you're like, because you get overwhelmed. Writing Dumb and Dumber 2 was an overwhelming thing. It was intimidating, because I was like, you know, you don't want to, honestly, I don't want to do it if it's not going to be as good as the first one.
Right.
And you can't write like that. When you sit down, and have that much pressure on you. So I just watch that, we'd flip it, and I say, let's just remember how simple comedy can be. And you watch a half hour and back at it.
That's pretty great advice, actually.
Yeah.
Find something that makes it a simpler process. Right?
It's so easy. When you try too hard to be clever, no.
Yeah. Well, I imagine over the years you guys had been asked to try to tackle that beast a time or 12. So was the response always, we're not going back there, or the day will come at some point?
No, it was always the day will come when Jim Carrey wants to do it.
Right.
We would have done that second, because that movie left them exactly where we had started them. It was the perfect movie for a sequel. By the way, we've been asked to do sequels. Something About Mary.
Sure.
The studio said, what about there's something else about Mary? It's like, no, the story was over. And in fact, at one point we said, well, if it turns out that Mary has balls, I'll do it. If you want to have that, she has a sack, and there's a whole new story.
Because that is something else.
Something else about Mary, you should know. Then we're open to it. But we didn't want to do it because it seemed like a money grab and a bullshit sequel. We've never done a sequel. But Dumb and Dumber I always wanted to do. And finally Jim came along and said, let's do it.
That's great.
Where are you guys in the process now?
We are so close to getting it going. Like, I'm literally like hoping tomorrow we're going to be on the road. But there are a couple of, be honest, this is what's going on, it's all the deals, it's so complicated. It's like Anchorman.
Yeah.
Anchorman 2, they had the exact same problem that we have, which is you got all these people coming back in. It's not a $100 million movie, it's a $30 million movie.
It has to be small.
It's got to be small. Everybody's got to take their thing, and it's just a long process.
Lawyers, bean counters, they come in.
And I'll bet Jeff Daniels won't work for 50 grand this time.
No, that fucker. No, no, but Jeff.
He's got a shooting schedule.
No, Jeff is. Everybody's extremely reasonable, but it's like you got to be more than reasonable on this one because all of a sudden they're like, everything's getting squeezed. The whole business is.
Sure.
People are just. You're getting squeezed. It's less and less. It's not what it was 10 years ago.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Which makes sense to them and none to us, because ultimately they're still making ridiculous
hand over fist
profits. Yeah, it hasn't slowed down for them.
Nope.
I remember going to I think it was the New York premiere, because Matt Damon was there, of Stuck on You, thinking, well, he's not a comedian. This should be interesting. And then watching it and thinking, how did we not know he was a comedian? So you did it with Jeff Daniels. You've done it with others who did not have a very strong comedic background. From the actor's perspective, we can't wait to show how diverse we are, but it's always difficult to get that across to the people who do the hiring. You guys seem to have a pretty good...
I believe any great actor can do any role. I believe that. For years, many years ago, like 15 years ago, I kept saying, what about De Niro? How about him in this role? They said, what? De Niro doesn't do comedy. I said, why not? They said, well, he's a dramatic actor. I said, no, he can do whatever he wants to do. And of course now...
Did they not see Rocky and Bullwinkle? I mean...
Midnight Run, hello.
Exactly. No, but Meet the Parents, all that stuff. He does more comedies than anything now. I always felt that way. I always thought that was bullshit. They say, well, he's a comedic actor and he's a dramatic actor. A great actor could do whatever. It never even occurred to me that Matt Damon couldn't do comedy in that.
Did he need convincing?
No. Well, they all need convincing. Again, it's never easy for us. It really isn't. Like, I've never... But again,
Never easy?
No, it really isn't. It really isn't easy.
Because I would think people are interested in expanding how the audience knows them. And you guys have a reputation for not just doing Dumb and Dumber, but now over the years you have a diverse portfolio yourselves. And I would think that a lot more actors would want to be in that world.
I think that too.
Yeah.
I don't.
And yet, they fight us every...
I lie in bed like, what?
So in the case of Matt Damon, was it his people who...
No, it's just, you got to go in and you got to convince them. Like Mary, Cameron Diaz. I begged Cameron Diaz to do that thing. Like, she was like...
Once you found out Courtney Cox wasn't available.
Yeah. She said, I don't know, it's just that hair gel thing. I don't know, that could ruin my career.
Are you serious?
Yeah, dead serious. I said, because it could have.
Sure. Well,
it could. If that doesn't work, now it worked. You know, we know what it is. But at the point, she's reading it. She's thinking, if that doesn't work, I'm cumhead for the rest of my life. They're like, this cumhead. Remember the girl in the movie? Yeah, cumhead. You know, no. And she was afraid of that. So we actually had to shoot it around it. So if it didn't work, like as we anticipated it would, then you could get out of that without having that scene. We did it 3 different ways. But they're always like, you know, it's always hard. I always go give them my best, and I always tell them this. I say, look, I think you're the right guy. I really want you to do it. Please do it, and this is why you should do it, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't do it, you know what? You got to listen to your heart. And don't worry about it. No, I take a very Zen view, because you know what's happened is we never get who we want, and we get better guys than I would have gotten. It's like, you know, someone says, if you get everything in the world that you want, then the world is going to be as good as you could imagine it to be.
Ah.
But if you don't get everything, then the universe takes over, and it might get better.
Wow.
There might be bigger things in store for you. You know, if
the term happy accident is for a reason.
Yeah, it's like I keep going back to my wife. It's Mother's Day, so this is good. But you know, I look like, you know, I've been with my wife for 20 years, but you know, there were girls before her I might have married if they had, you know, if it had gone the right way and I wanted to, whatever, you know. Yet it wasn't until my wife came along and it worked out that way. I look at all the failures before that in relationships that were just that were
fortunate.
Thank God.
Fortunate.
I mean, I would have been married when I was 14 if the first one.
If you had your way.
Oh yeah, Paula Pickard. I'm like, oh my God, I love you. Let's run away. You know?
The other, I think, question that Jamie had was in fact from Paula Pickard. Let's go ahead and read that now. Nope.
No, we don't have one.
So,
Nope.
Did you have a sit down with Matt Damon? What was that process?
We went to his
people.
No, we went to his loft in New York City.
Okay.
And we hadn't met him, and we were there about 5 minutes, and I asked to use his bathroom, and I had to go to the bathroom. I went in the bathroom, and I just got, I thought, oh, this would be funny. So I went in, and I took off all my clothes, and I lathered my hair up, and I just stuck my head out of the bathroom. I said, do you have any conditioner? And I just had a full head of thing, and he said, okay, I'm in. That's
Come on.
I swear to God.
Come on.
God's honest truth.
That is spectacular.
God's honest truth. Yeah. Yeah. I was completely naked. I was like, get any conditioner? He goes, I'm in. That was it. That's how it
okay. First of all, you buried the lead. Second of all, there's a story I don't think many have heard.
No. Nobody knows that.
Also, when you're in the bathroom,
Yeah.
there's the moment of the thought, ooh,
Yeah.
this will be funny.
Yeah.
There's the natural secondary thought, which is
this too much?
Is that really what you want? And then there's the, I'm taking my clothes off. This is happening.
Yeah.
I'm putting the shit in my hair. Boy, this better work.
Yeah.
I got to take the shot.
Yeah. It doesn't always work.
No.
It worked that time.
Get out. Could have
But
been his
I've had them
response.
where they flop, and you're like, okay, that was dumb. I wish I hadn't done that, but you know.
Do you have any conditioner? I'm in.
Yeah. I said, hey, you got any, I had no clothes on. And just, hey, you got any conditioner? I had a full lathered up head. And he says, I'm in. And that was it. And we did the movie. Yeah.
Did you see him in The Informant?
Yes.
Soderbergh?
Yeah.
How
He's amazing.
Extraordinary performance.
And by the way, you know, what a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, obviously, you know, everybody.
Here's the reputation.
Yeah.
It's just 100% true.
You know, that's something worth talking about. I always, I wish somebody would do an article about, like, because there's so much negativity in the business, and everybody talks about this guy and that guy. But we've been really lucky. We have worked with good people. Like, we haven't really worked with a mega asshole yet. Like, I haven't had that guy who won't come out of the trailer. Or,
right.
You know, you hear stories about can't make eye contact, all that kind of shit. And I'm always like, really? How does that happen?
Yeah.
We've never, ever had anything like that. Like, Cameron Diaz is exactly the way you would hope Cameron Diaz would be. She's a doll. She was just fantastic. She wanted to go have a beer after work. She was fun, lots of laughs. You know, it was just... And he was just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, just such a nice guy.
Exceptionally well-mannered. Kinnear, on the other hand,
he can be a smartass.
Holy fuck, what a jerk. I was thrilled to see in the research that my old pal Pete Jones had written the original
Hall Pass.
He
wrote the whole thing.
And then you adapted it with him.
Yes, exactly.
How
do you know Pete?
Well, his coming out party was for Ben and Matt. He won the Project Greenlight the first year.
Right.
And I might have been one of the leads in that little film.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's
it's quite all right.
Yeah.
It was not seen by many. Yeah. I loved Pete.
Yeah,
and I was
great.
thrilled to see that.
Yeah, Pete's an amazing guy. Yeah. Love Pete Jones.
Yeah.
He kills me.
Salt of the earth, incredibly talented.
Yeah. He's a good writer.
Damn.
A fantastic writer. I always said, he won Project Greenlight and he got to direct his own movie, but that's really a screenwriting competition.
Yeah.
They sent thousands.
The first year was the one where they made it screenwriting and directing, and then after that they broke it up into screenwriting and directing.
Okay, because he is I'm not saying he couldn't be a director, but he's one of the best writers I know.
Well, that's the thing, is that you're not wrong. Technically, Sam is correct, but you're not wrong that the winner of that was going to be based on the screenplay.
Yeah.
None of these guys were giving audition tapes as a director.
Yeah.
They were submitting screenplays.
Yeah. And he could direct. I don't mean to denigrate his directing, but he is one of the best comedy writers I know. And when I read Hall Pass, I didn't know Pete Jones, and I read the script, and I just thought it was hilarious. I loved the tone, and I love he's from Chicago, and he's got a real middle of the country kind of sensibility. He's a down-to-earth guy, and but yet very funny. And that was a ball. And again, got to work with good people, Sudeikis and Owen, and Stephen Merchant, and all those guys. But Owen's
he's a phenom.
Owen's he's unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's such a good guy.
It's a little ridiculous what a sweetheart he is,
Yeah.
and the talent that comes across on screen.
Yeah. What in the history of our relationship makes you think I'd want to do Hall Pass? I do.
That's what he said to you?
Yeah.
What was your response to that?
Well, I had called. I actually met Owen when he did Bottle Rocket.
Sure.
And here's a good story. Bottle Rocket inspired something about Mary in a huge way, and this is how. There's something about Mary was Decter and Strauss, Ed Decter, John Strauss. They'd written this script. It was 10 years old, and it was a great idea.
It'd been around forever. I'd heard that.
Yeah, it had been around, but it was a great concept, and it had gone into development hell, and they kind of took all the good shit out of it, the studio. But it still was this great idea. So my brother and I read it. We said, let's do this next. So we started rewriting it, and we were on page 45 or 50. And all of a sudden we hit a wall because we realized it's so obvious that Mary's going to end up with Ted. You know what's going to happen. We have an hour to go. This is horrible.
Conflict, quick.
No, it was completely disturbing that we're on page 45 and you know what's going to happen. And I couldn't get around it for about 2 weeks. We just sat there looking at each other like, what the hell are we going to do? And then I watched Bottle Rocket on cable or on video. And that's a little masterpiece, Bottle Rocket.
Yeah.
And it starts out, these guys are, they break Owen out of this, so-so nut house, but he didn't have to be broken out. He could have just, walked out.
Right.
And Owen's got a 5-year plan on paper. He says, we're going to do the first year, we're going to rob mom and pops. The second year, we're going to go to this. We're going to do 5 years, we're going to make all our money. Then we're going to start a business, something. He has some cockamamie plan. They head out on the road. They go to a motel the first night, and Luke Wilson falls in love with the maid at the motel, and they don't leave. They just stick there. And I was watching, I was thinking, this isn't what they were planning when they were writing this movie. They didn't have that mapped out. What they did was, when they got there at that motel and saw something happening here, they let the movie go where it wanted to go. They let it go in the direction it went. They didn't continue to do the 5-year plan thing. It didn't matter. They let the flow of the story go where it wanted to go. And I called my brother and said, you got to watch this movie. This is fucking awesome. We're doing it all wrong. We're doing it all wrong. She doesn't have to end up with him. She does not have to end up with him. Mary does not have to end up with Ted. She could end up with any of the guys. Why are we writing it that Ted has to do it? Just because that's how it's been for 100 years?
Right.
That the lead guy? No. Let it go where it wants to go. And from that point forward, we wrote the movie. We were fair to all the characters, to Chris Elliott and to Matt Dillon and to the other guy and to everybody. Like, we didn't know Brett Favre. We didn't know who was going to end up with Mary as we're writing.
Right.
And we got 5 pages from the end, and we looked at each other and we were like, they actually think now that she's going to end up with Brett Favre. Let's give her to Ted. And that's what we did.
Right.
And I called those guys and told them, I didn't know them. I said, your movie inspired me. That movie was a flop, you know that?
Yeah.
Did nothing. It was a disaster. In fact, I think it was the last movie that Owen ever watched of himself.
Is that right?
Yeah, he said he went to the test screening and he was so horrified he went into a deep depression for so long, just seeing himself up on screen. He doesn't watch his own movies. But in any case, we met with them and with Wes Anderson and Owen, and just said, you guys are like unbelievably talented, and I have to thank you for what you brought to my. You're so smart. It helped us write the script, and we became friends.
Right.
That's great.
That is pretty damn great. And so then Owen said to you, what of our long relationship did you...
What in the history of our relationship would make you think I'd want to do Hall Pass?
Because we got Richard Jenkins.
Yeah. Come on, man. It's going to be fun. It's just going to be a big party. We're going to hang out. We're going to play golf. I don't even play golf. I know, but we're going to teach you. We're going to have good. We're going to be in Atlanta. Have you seen the girls in Atlanta? They're beautiful. So we just talked him into it, like a lot of guys. You just kind of tell them, like, look, it's going to be a good time. We're going to have a fun time. Let's just go, It's going to be a party. Let's hang out.
And that's all you need.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that's beautiful. Michelle Monaghan.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Roy.
And Mullen Ackerman, also in Heartbreak Kid.
Yeah. How impactful was the original for you?
It was extremely. That's one of my all-time favorite movies. The Heartbreak Kid, and never ever did I want to remake The Heartbreak Kid. It was never intended to be a remake, and that's one of the regrets of my career is that it ended up being called The Heartbreak Kid because it was supposed to be called The 7-Day Itch, and it was going to be. It was called The 7-Day Itch.
Great fucking title.
And it was based on The Heartbreak Kid. It was going to say at the bottom, but it wasn't The Heartbreak Kid. You can't do The Heartbreak Kid. Why would you want to do The Heartbreak Kid?
You don't need to.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I did feel that the last act of The Heartbreak Kid, the original, could be updated, and a lot of it. I wanted to update the whole thing. I just loved the concept. And we wanted to redo it, but change it, update it, do everything. It was a very dark movie, and it was a very Jewish movie. And we just got away from all that. It was like everything about it. Again, it was complete rewrite based on The Heartbreak Kid. Well, Fox. Even though we had a deal at Fox at the time, they fought us because they owned the 7-Year Itch.
Oh boy!
And they said this is going to hurt their title, the 7-Year Itch, if we called it the 7-Day Itch. So they took us to court and won. And then
they took you to court.
And they won. While we were making it, they had a court thing, and they said, no, you can't call it that. So then we were going to call it the Mulligan. Golf.
Sure.
Get another shot. I'm fine with that. Call it the Mulligan. And then toward the end, the studio started saying, well, we're not sure. It was DreamWorks. And they're like, well, we don't like the Mulligan. People don't know what a Mulligan is. They're going to think it's a guy. I said, okay. So then we were calling it the Do-Over, okay, which was fine. And ultimately, and by the way, I had a meeting with Spielberg, at DreamWorks. And he had said at the very beginning, whatever you do, you cannot call it The Heartbreak Kid because they will crucify you. They will crucify you if they think you're making The Heartbreak Kid again. And I said, absolutely, you can't do that. The last minute...
his company...
Yeah. At the last minute, what's her name, Snyder at DreamWorks, says, we have to call it The Heartbreak Kid. I said, no, please, I'm begging you, don't call it The Heartbreak Kid. She goes, no, we're going to call it The Heartbreak Kid. I said, listen, they're going to kill us if it's a Heartbreak Kid, because it's not The Heartbreak Kid. It's nothing like The Heartbreak Kid. And if you're going to do The Heartbreak Kid, you do The Heartbreak Kid. This is a completely different movie. You can't do it. And she says, yeah, but we believe it's going to do, this is going to be better for you, and I'll take full responsibility. Yeah. I don't know what that means, by the way, because I've never spoken to her since. And the movie came out, and it was the worst reviews of our career. They crushed it, saying, how dare they do The Heartbreak Kid, you know, blah, blah, blah. By the way, interesting fact, that movie, The Heartbreak Kid, was never it was never worldwide. It was only U.S. It never had traveled.
Really?
People didn't know about The Heartbreak Kid. Overseas, got the best reviews of our career. Best reviews of our career.
Expectation, once again.
Best reviews of our career, all over the place. People in Brazil, Spain, France, they were like, this is a masterpiece. These guys are on top of their game. They're the greatest. You wouldn't believe the reactions. And it did great. It did 100 million overseas. But here, the reviews they crushed us.
Right. How dare you?
And it hurt it. And it is one of, like, you know, you have a couple things where you're like, God, I wish I'd fought harder on that. And I knew it would happen. Absolutely guaranteed it would happen, and yet at some point she said, "Well, don't worry, I'll take credit for it. It's my responsibility. I'll take the responsibility." I was like, after it came out and the reviews came out, and I'm like, "How is she taking responsibility?"
Well, let me ask you about that. When every fiber of your being is not just remembering what the great Spielberg said, you can't do this because, and you say, I agree. When every fiber of your being knows this to be true, and the train is already sailing down the tracks, is that the reason you ultimately have to, at some point, give up the fight, or is it simply because they own the football?
I never give up the fight. I honestly don't. That's a rare time where I did give up the fight. Like, I honestly, like, you just don't lose those fights, and I did lose that one, and I lost it because I just they were grinding me down, and Ben wasn't disagreeing with them. He didn't say, if he had said, no, we can't do that, then it wouldn't have happened. But Ben was like, he didn't know, and he didn't, you know. And it just hit the point where I was like, all right, you know, you start feeling like the loudmouth, like, you know, whiner, what do you know, you know. And I'm not always right. I've fought for other things that, you know, I got and turned out I shouldn't have gotten, you know. Sure. So at some point I wish I hadn't lost that fight, but beforehand, as much as I knew I was right, there was a little part of me thinking, I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter. You know,
hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, because also the movie was our highest testing movie. The movie tested higher than any movie we ever did in the U.S. So you start thinking nothing's going to stop this train.
How are you with those test screenings and test results?
I hate numbers, but I believe in tests because it's either funny or it's not. And if they're not laughing, you got a problem. Right. You know, as far as the numbers.
So you go for the ear. You go for the listening to the laughs.
Absolutely. Did they laugh at that joke? Did they laugh at this joke? Hey, they didn't laugh at this joke. So then you have, like, okay, do we cut that joke or do we redo that joke? Cut it different. Do we cut it out or do we recut it differently? Where you're trying to.
By the way, that puzzle can go on till the end of time.
Yes.
How do you cut any particular joke in a way that delivers the joke, the laugh you're looking for?
Okay. Here's a great example. Dumb and Dumber. There's the scene where Jeff hits her in the face with the snowball. Okay, always got a huge laugh. But originally, when we shot that, we had her come up and she had blood under her nose.
Uh-oh.
He had given her a bloody nose. And he whams her in the face and the whole place explodes. And then she comes up and she had a bloody nose. Boom! No more laughter. The audience stops laughing. Not only do they stop laughing for about 2 minutes. Like, there's other stuff that should have been funny, but they're still thinking, ooh, she's got a bloody nose from that. That's not very funny. You go in, you cut that out. You get rid of the blood, you know, and now they laugh for the next 2 minutes. It's, you know, little things like that you wouldn't know if you didn't see it. It never occurred to me that the little bloody nose would stop it, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's, you know, she's hurting.
So it is helpful to be open to the.
I totally believe in test screenings. However, the number thing is bullshit. That's like Dumb and Dumber never hit 70. First of all,
92 in the top 2 boxes.
Yeah. Dumb and Dumber never hit 70. It was always in the 60s, 67, 68, because some people are like, and Mary only hit 80 once. Mary was like in the low 70s, because, you know, 1 out of 4 people will be a little put off, like, I don't know, thing in the ear, I don't know, I can't recommend that. I don't want my mother to go to that thing. You know. So you're gonna.
We don't want your mother to go to it either.
No, but I remember when Dumb and Dumber was coming out, we were scoring 68, 66, 67. And there was a movie, Miracle on 34th Street remake coming out. That scored 99. And there was a big article in the paper about the highest scoring movie in a long time, Miracle on 34th Street, 99. I was opening same weekend as us. I was like, perfect. That's great. That's just what we need. That flopped, and we did great. The numbers, it's a bunch of bullshit. The numbers. I hate numbers. I wish I never did numbers. But I like the screenings. And also I like them writing down stuff, what they don't get.
Right.
I didn't understand this. What was supposed to be, I never saw the briefcase until this point, really? Because he was carrying it out the door, but no one noticed it. Okay, we got to do a close-up shot of this briefcase before he goes out the door. That kind of stuff.
Nice. Have you ever heard the test card that Barry Levinson likes to show from Rain Man? Hey, he hasn't.
The audience has heard it 72 times.
I haven't heard it. I'm dying to hear it.
Yeah. So it's on the 3x5
I actually heard it.
card. Oh, you did?
No.
Ah!
No, let me hear it.
Hey, why didn't the little guy just snap out of it? From Rain Man.
What was it?
Hey, comma, why didn't the little guy just snap out of it?
That's hilarious.
Is it not worth repeating?
Yeah, that's funny. Why did the little guy just snap out of it?
Yeah.
I will say this, speaking of the briefcase, I say Samsonite, I was way off very often. That's one of my most quoted things. Whenever I can't get somebody's name right. Whenever I go Samsonite.
Oh, Samsonite.
I was way off.
Yeah.
I say that
Throw in the S, though.
constantly.
Yeah. And that's what, by the way, you know, a guy like Jim Carrey, you and a Bill Murray and a few guys, they will take that next thing. Like, you hope when you start a movie, I've never started a movie that I didn't think was 100. The script was 100% perfect. Yeah. If I felt it needed more work, I wouldn't be starting the movie, honestly. But like I've heard of people like saying, "Yeah, we're going to work on it as we go along." I was like, really? Oh, fuck, I'd hate that. You know, to think of that, like that, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But what you find out is it's not perfect. It's like 70% perfect, maybe. And you find that out as you're shooting it. You're seeing, oh, this isn't working, and that's not working. And as a director, you try to correct it on the spot as you're going along. But when you have a great actor, Jim Carrey, Bill Murray, guys like that, they are correcting it all the way along, and they're making it better. And the example I always use is, and I always kick myself for this because I feel so stupid, but in Dumb and Dumber, where he says, "I bet I can get you betting before the day is out." He goes, "I don't bet." He goes, "I bet I can get you betting." He goes, "No, I don't bet." He goes, 2-to-1 odds. No, 3-to-1, 10-to-1 odds. He goes, "All right, I'll take that." Well, originally we had Jim go, "Gotcha. You bet," you know, and then Jim read it and he goes, "No, he doesn't even get that he got it." And I was like, "That's right. That's right." And that's what the good guys do. They find another layer.
Yeah.
They find that other layer that you just missed, and he probably did that 10 times in that movie. You're just sitting there.
By the way, from the actor's standpoint, it's pretty spectacular when you have someone, especially a writer-director. Not just a director, because that's, they take it over. But when the guy also wrote it, and you try something, and they're open to it, that empowers any of us to continue to try, and then you take whatever you like.
Well, we actually go further than that. At the beginning of every movie, we started this on Dumb and Dumber, where, because we didn't, we don't pretend to know everything. We made an announcement at the beginning of the movie, and we always do this. If anybody has a thought how to make this better during the making of this movie, and I don't care who you are, what department you're in, but if you see an opportunity, or if you see something that's been done, that I haven't seen every movie in the world, if there's like, no, they did that in this movie, don't do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Please come forward.
We do that on every film,
every movie, and what happens is, it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, because you have people coming forward, like sometimes you get that one guy who's just like all day long coming up to you, and he's like, "Hey, what about this, what about that?" Like, "Hey, no, we saw that, yeah, what about this?"
Well, you asked.
Yeah, no, but every movie you do get, probably 3 times, somebody comes up and they say, "Hey, what if the guy did this?" And you're like, fucking awesome. And then I get up as we're doing it, or after we're doing it, I say, "By the way, that came from Kenny in props.
Yeah.
Kenny's idea, guys." And I share it with everybody. I want everybody to know, you're part of the thing. This is team effort here. I give them credit where, But no, you gotta be open to that. You gotta look for that stuff.
Do you do table reads?
Absolutely.
Hear it out loud?
Always do a table read. No, the table read, with the actors, we do that. I don't get much out of that.
No, I mean during the process before you
What we do,
get anywhere near
what we do
shooting.
is we table it with a bunch of writers.
Right.
Right before we're doing it, probably a month before, we bring in a bunch of guys that we know, usually Family Guy writers. I just happen to know a lot of those guys. Because Seth MacFarlane, we went to the same high school, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that boarding school I got sent away to, he went to that. He lived in that town. And we met years ago, became friends, and through him I met all the guys over there. Danny Smith, a Rhode Island guy, a good friend of mine. And so those guys come in, I get like 4 or 5 of them, Ricky Blitt, a few guys, and we table it for about 4 nights. And they come from Family Guy. We pay them, you know, good chunk of dough. And they come there and we go through the entire script. And on Thursday night, the last night, we do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have full bar, a bartender. We're pounding them. We're just starting to go at it. Everybody's just getting loose. And we almost always get between, in those 4 days, between 10 and 15 jokes that you did not have in the movie before. And it's such a good investment. I always tell the studio, because they have to pay the guys, you know, coming in 4 nights in a row after work. And, but it is the best spent money you could, you know, and especially with guys like that, you know, if you get Simpson guys or Family Guy guys or you know, real good comedy writers.
Yeah. That's pretty spectacular.
It's fun.
Like the Three Stooges a whole bunch, by the way, grew up on them as a child also, and felt like this was about as great as an homage and tribute can be. You captured exactly the sort of essence and visual humor, and stayed true to exactly what they did on that show, instead of trying to
appreciate it,
remake or rebake or recook or reimagine.
Yeah.
I liked that it was broken up into 3 episodes. I liked all of it.
The 3 guys are
spectacular.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it really was.
You know, Christy Mentopoulos, the guy who played Mo, who nobody knows, is a genius. I mean, he is.
Does a lot of Family Guy voices, right? I was reading a little bit about
Does he?
him. I
don't even know that. Yeah. And then you know, Sean Hayes, Will Sasso. These like. My fear making that movie was, and again, that was like a dream project, so we wanted to get it right, and we wrote all new material, you know, same sound effects, same hits, same things, but new story.
Right.
And we wanted to get that thing right, but what was I saying? What led me into this? I'm getting ditchy now.
The performers.
My fear had always been that 2 of them would be great and 1 would be so-so.
Right.
I always was afraid that it would be made and everybody would say, God, Mo was great and Larry was great, but Curly kind of, you know, he's okay, you know, that kind of thing.
Which brings me to the Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro version.
Well, as it turned out, I always have somebody different. When people come up to me about the Stooges, they always have a different guy. They're always talking about, you know, Mo, Larry, or Curly, and I've never heard a negative thing said about any of those 3 guys. They couldn't have been better. It's the best casting we've ever done. And it might be the proudest I am of any movie because of the degree of difficulty. It was a hard movie to do. It could have been a real piece of crap. And I love that movie, and it makes me feel good. It warms my heart. But it really has a lot to do with those 3 guys. Yes, Benicio del Toro, Sean Penn, Jim Carrey. That was at one point going to happen. We had those 3 guys. Everybody was interested. But, again, it was a budget thing. Right. It was just too much money. The studio wouldn't do it.
Did you have a sit down with Sean Penn to discuss it?
Yeah. I went up to San Francisco and I hung out with him one night, took my wife, and we had a ball. He's a spectacular guy. What a storyteller.
Yeah.
You know, it was one of the most memorable nights of my career, actually. My wife still talks about it. She goes, hey, can we go to San Francisco to see each other? I said, honey, I don't know him that well. I can't just call him up and say, hey, we want to come back. You know, we really had fun with you that night. But we did have a ball. He took us he took us all around the city. I don't know San Francisco. And he said, meet me here. And then we went there, and then we went there, and then we were in the back room of this place, and we were playing pool, and we were over there. And it was just like, hey, do you know that this is the room where Kerouac did this and that? He knows the history, and he walked us through it. It was really a ball. It was an unbelievably fun night.
Right. Yeah. And to sit down with Benicio?
Same thing. Benicio, I met him a couple times, met him at his house, met him in a restaurant. We just hung and talked. You know, it was just, everybody wanted to do it. Jim Carrey wanted to do it if they did it.
Right.
Jim said, I'm doing it. If those guys do it, I do it. You know, and we had a great, I've had that happen a bunch.
Right.
You know, Stuck on You, at one point it was supposed to be Jim Carrey and Woody Allen. Yeah.
They were both in?
They were both in. I met with Woody Allen in his office in New York City. And Woody was like, yeah, I just want to take, I'll do whatever you ask me to do. Don't put me in a toilet. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the only thing he asked?
Yeah. I just ask you, don't put me in a toilet. I'm like, no toilet. He goes, okay, I'm in. But then again, because Jim Carrey was getting like $20 million, Woody's people wanted him to get, $10 million. And the studio said no.
Yeah.
And it just happens all the time. You got these guys and they just won't pay. And,
yeah.
But I have no regrets. It's like again, I look at the guys we got there, Matt, and these guys are
spectacular,
fantastic. And in fact, one of the great compliments I've gotten on that movie, and that's a sleeper movie of ours. That didn't do great, but I love that movie.
Oh, I love it.
Is that David Sedaris? Someone told me they were at UCLA. David Sedaris was reading from one of his short story collections. And someone asked him afterwards, they said, question, what are you doing after this? He said, I'm going to my room. I rented Stuck on You. And everybody laughed. And he says, have you seen Stuck on You? And he said, you should see it. It's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Wow.
Because I watch it all the time. And I was like, oh my God, David Sedaris?
That's pretty great.
That was like the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
David Sedaris is, without question, the greatest comedic short story writer in the world.
I would agree.
And that he felt that way. You get those little boosts. It's like, it's like, Siskel looking into the camera saying, dude, love it. Don't worry about it. Those help.
Yeah. Well, you got all your answers correct. Let's just start
Really?
there. Yeah.
Wow.
You didn't miss one. You got everyone correct.
Just like high school.
Yeah. Well, you did a little better this time.
I finally had someone get to me.
Yeah. I broke you down.
Yeah, you got me.
Yeah. I got you to confess a couple of things that I don't think you were ready to talk about yet, and I think you're
this is the longest interview ever. Did you guys ever? Do you always go this long, or is this a longer?
Only if the person's interesting.
Yeah.
Do we let it go this long?
By the way, that's the factor, and he's not kidding. Although there was no stopping John Landis, who went 2 hours and 52 minutes. He holds the record.
Oh, wow.
You don't want that record.
No, I don't want it.
No.
Yeah, this is getting into like Dumb and Dumber territory. First thing.
It's only 2 hours and 28 minutes.
Yeah, we got to get out of here. And it's Mother's Day. I got to get home.
You got to go. You had told me that you had seen a bit of the show. I have to believe you never made it to the end, so you may not realize that it's now time for you to do a Larry King game. All the guests do them.
Awesome.
I'll go over the rules again. That's your camera. When you're ready, you'll stare down the barrel and simply give us that moment where Larry would share something about himself. Not about you, about Larry. You're Larry now. So I want a bad Larry King impression. I don't want a good one. That's a relief for you because you don't do a good one.
No, I know. I have no.
Give me a bad.
And I do impressions, even as bad as they are.
I noticed.
I don't give a shit.
So I want a bad Larry King.
Here's my De Niro.
Yeah, that's beautifully horrible. That is beautifully horrible.
A little bit.
You're going a little Robert Duvall with the tongue.
A little bit.
Now I think you do a great Duvall.
A little bit. My Lee Harvey Oswald. Yeah, I have a few people I do.
Bad Larry King impression.
Okay.
Feel free to use the Harvey Oswald face.
Okay.
It might work. And then it's Larry doing a little bumper before he goes to the phones. He shares something about himself and he goes right to the phone. And if the name of the city is funny sounding, it's not bad.
Okay, this is really confusing. I never watched Larry King, I should tell you that. So I can't even remember his voice.
Okay, they're going to hate me, but here's the prototype.
Yes, okay.
Here's the prototype.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
I
like to teabag the gravy boats before the guests arrive. Schenectady, hello.
Okay.
So there's the
All right.
prototype.
Yes.
It's a little confessional.
All right.
And then you go to the phones, the name of the city is funny. There's your camera when you're ready.
Okay, so, and what's the first part I'm supposed to do?
It's anything.
Jump right in.
It's just Larry sharing something about himself. That's
Oh, geez. Okay. Let me see. God, see, this is the thing. That's why I'm a writer and not a stand-up comedian.
But that's why
Larry's very old.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe I got through the whole night without going to the bathroom once. I've had a full bladder ever since. Providence, you're on.
That's all we ask.
There you go.
That's all we ask.
Okay.
All right, sit there uncomfortably while I wrap things up for the folks at home. Thanks once again, those of you who joined us live. Write to us at contact@kevinpollak'schatshow.com. I want to thank Samantha, who joined us on the makeup once again. Justin Weiss out there running sound and various setup productions. Josh Negrin, as always. Kenny right here in the studio. David, our wonderful intern, returns from the boards where he's doing a wonderful Sam Shepard play. Sammy and Jamie, thank you both. Elaine Ewing doing the social media. Calcanis again for the wonderful cameras. We love them very, very much. I always leave somebody out. Who am I forgetting this time? J-Mac, who of course did a beautiful job on the research.
Just because he's not present.
It's because he is home.
Researching robotic bees. I kid you not.
Researching robotic bees.
Because that's a thing.
Yep.
He really is.
Yeah.
You know, the amazing thing is we never even got to my Levine stuff.
We didn't.
No, but that's okay. Let's leave something for next time.
Oh,
yes.
man.
I have good Levine stories.
Yeah. And not Sam Levine, so relax.
Yes.
It's the Levine your dad said get away from Levine.
Yeah. But anyway, back to you.
No, please.
No,
we want to go for the record now. All right. If you're joining us live, you'll know that next week you should come back for the wonderful Stephen Merchant. If you're watching this after the fact, what the fuck is wrong with you? Try to join us live some Sunday. Dial us up on the YouTube, Kevin Pollak's chat show. I think that's it. So until next time, and as always, get out of my face.